Hello and welcome to our Tuesday evening workshops. I think we have a continued discussion of proposed updates to athletic field use. If you two can please speak loud and clearly into the mics, introduce yourselves, and please proceed.
I'm Megan Bates, Deputy for Maintenance and Operations for Public Works.
My name is Nicole Welch. I'm the Recreation Director. And we are here to, as you said, Mr. Mayor, continue the conversation about the athletic use policy. About 6 or 8 weeks ago, we had an initial conversation that talked about some of the changes and additions to the policy, and that led to some other conversations about, obviously, Franklin Pasture, which is going to kind of carry the bulk of our conversation for tonight as well. So we had a list of things that we wanted to talk about. We'd love to hear your comments and any questions you have back from us about some of these processes and proposals. So the first one we want
If I may, if I can get councilors to hold their questions to the end of the presentation, that would be great.
So the first one, excuse me, is just a quick review of the field reservation process and user fees, and all this is outlined in the policy. So there is a process and also a procedure to talk about the field use priorities. So priority as far as any of the athletic fields goes, which is LAP, the Randall Road, and Franklin Pasture, and the Drew and Bannon fields. So Lewiston Public Schools gets the first dibs on that. They get to schedule the games. I get emails from Chris Roy, who is the athletic director at the LMS, and then Jason Fuller, who's the athletic director at the high school. He sends over the high school ones, so we plug those in first. The second tier then goes to recreation and city-sponsored events. That's, for example, our Saturday morning soccer, our T-ball, summer track programs. So that gets filtered in after the school items are. The next option is rentals and reservations. So when we refer to rentals and reservations, that includes everything from a Lewiston nonprofit reserving the track for a track meet. It could be a commercial use such as Firecracker Sports coming in to reserve Joe DeShane's for like a paid rental. So rentals and reservations, it's a broad category. It's not just outside of Lewiston, not just in Lewiston. It's really anybody who's providing a certificate of insurance, paying application fees, and if applicable, will be covering like their own personal invoices as well. And then after that, that's when the athletic facility is open just for the public use at that point. So those are the 4 different tiers. So the fees, which are located on page 14 of your packet, it's on page 10 of the actual athletic field use policy. We did talk about these briefly when we met the last time. I had made a couple of suggestions. After taking that feedback, I just went back to the original plan, which included no increases or decreases for any type of rental structure. So government and Lewiston Public Schools, they still have exempt for all turf rentals and all other athletic facilities. And if you look on, again, it was page 10 of the athletic field use policy, you'll see that there are different tiers for prices for both the turf Franklin Pasture Complex and all the other grass facilities, which includes Randall Roads, Lewiston Athletic Park, and the Bannon Drew and softball complex. So real quickly on how to complete the reservation process. So the first go-to we do is you go to www.lewistonrecreation.com. It's a really easy process. It's actually updated. We made a transition from an old software. This one is much more user-friendly, a lot less bells and whistles in the reservation process, which can sometimes slow down folks. So that's number 1. But number 2, and my most preferred, is people just emailing me directly, because I oversee those rentals anyways. I prefer to have that one-on-one conversation with the person, whether it's, again, whether it's a local nonprofit and they just need to rent the track for an hour, or if it's a bigger commercial entity. So that way I can learn more about what their needs are. I can learn about what we might need to set up on the facility. I can check in with the schools, make sure they have nothing going on. So again, they can either go to our website to register, or they can reach out to me at nwelch@lewistonmaine.gov, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about renting any of the fields. So as far as what you would need to rent a facility, the number one thing is a certificate of insurance. That is in case, anything is damaged or left behind. Basically, it just kind of covers the renter, and it also gives us information if there is anything broken or anything. We have direction to go in, we have the people to talk to, we have the official rental contract on hand. We also ask for a $50 application fee and a signed facility use agreement that again kind of covers everything that's in the COI as well. I think those are all my notes on that. Did you want to go on to the next piece?
Sure. So I'm going to be speaking about the facility hour proposal. The facility needs volunteers to participate in assisting with the litter pickup, damage to the facility, communication between Public Works, Recreation Department, and basic oversight for both planned and unplanned activities. So Monday morning, I walked the facility, and the litter was negligible. It was just, the facility looked nice. It needed a mowing, but it looked really nice. I just spoke to Jason Fuller, Athletic Director Jason Fuller, and he said Monday night, someone went in and dumped over all the trash cans. There are 3 holes that are burnt into the surface of the artificial turf, and someone threw some rocks on the turf also. So these are the type of things that happen. One minute you're in a good place, the next minute you're not in a good place. So we really do need a sufficient amount of volunteers that can address planned events such as we had on was August 2nd, I think, that we were out there. And then we need also those volunteers that we can call on a moment's notice that are available and dependable to help assist with these types of events. So we had the event on August 2nd, which I'll talk to in a moment, but we also need to plan another event, and something that might be like on a Saturday morning after a Friday night game in the morning to get that place cleaned up with volunteers so it looks presentable when we have renters come in on Saturday. So right now we're proposing that we're opening the facility for reserved structured activities only until we have a sufficient number of dependable and available volunteers. I want to talk a little bit now about the cost of the artificial turf. So I just recently, as of this afternoon, received a price, and I have a follow-up meeting tomorrow morning. But we're looking at approximately $2.7 million to take care of both of the fields. There might be some wiggle room there. Once we investigate a little bit further, we'll be able to have something more specific to put in the CIP. But this estimate is good for 14 days, and we're looking at putting this we actually have it in year 2026, so that number that I have in there now will be updated. I also want to talk about August 2nd. So a few of you were there on August 2nd. It was a beautiful summer night. I don't think we could have asked for better weather. So with low humidity, we had about 30 volunteers show up, and the atmosphere was very positive. So we ended up handing out and collecting volunteer forms. We basically got about 12 volunteer forms. So another good reason to have another event is to try to obtain more volunteers. And so Superintendent Langlois, he was there to open us up. I provided some introductions. And then we had Director Welch, who spoke very thoroughly on what we needed for volunteers. So she spoke on the various volunteer efforts for like planned events, such as we were having that evening, unplanned or unstructured activities that really end up resulting in the trash, dog waste, damage to the facility, basically making the field, the facility unpresentable for renters or unusable. She spoke on the need for a facility leader that would be willing to be at Franklin Pasture at specific times depending on the time of the year and what programs are happening. Someone who could monitor visitor behavior, personal safety, making sure the facility is used correctly, educate visitors on the rules, and report like how to train them to report on behaviors, problem behaviors, and who to report to, the appropriate people to report to. And this person could also track how many people are using the facility, what the litter pickup looks like, issue sport equipment to users, and to assist with first aid. These individuals, whether volunteers, whether they are volunteering for planned events or unstructured events, they all need to be trained. So, and the training needs to be consistent. So, training on customer service, what to do if, and volunteer expectations. And then the evening pretty much closed out with Superintendent Langlois talking about courage. And I think that's the biggest deal, is people having the courage to speak up when they see that the facility is not being used properly. And then if they say something and nothing happens, then to report it to the appropriate entity. And then we ended with litter pickup. I had my spiel I was going to say, but these guys were so anxious to get out there. I got half of what I was going to say. I just didn't want to see anybody get hurt. But we picked up about 20 pounds of litter. So 30 people, 20 pounds, about 23 labor hours that evening were accomplished. And we finished up about 7 o'clock. So it was a great evening for those who, I think, had a good time.
And the last piece that we wanted to talk about, we were looking at a lot of the, again, a lot of the issues that were happening at Franklin Pasture, and looking at the workload and looking at the staff and doing a lot of evaluation of, what could we do? What would be an ideal situation? So I'd like to pitch an idea of creating a new position. This would be a new position underneath the Recreation Department, and they would basically have 4 primary functions. So the first function of this person would be a lot of community networking. They'd have to be a people person. The goals would be to work with Lewiston residents to help them secure fields as needed, get to know the needs and wants of the community, and also facilitate volunteer cleanups and program supervision. So if this Franklin Pasture cleanup kind of group keeps going and keeps gaining momentum, under their purview would be like scheduling, making sure that volunteer packets get filled out correctly, working on training them, and really kind of overseeing this volunteer kind of workforce. A lot like some of my youth sports folks do now, where they'll train volunteer coaches, complete the volunteer background checks, make sure they have all the equipment. This person will be doing something very similar, except more focused at Franklin Pasture. The second piece would be to assist with supervision of athletic field rentals. Right now, Athletic Director Jason Fuller, he oversees, I would say, about 99.5% of all the rentals that are happening over there. Occasionally, they're my staff or myself that's coming over to check in on things. But this person would give us another set of eyes and ears. We could open up the facility specifically for games and events, in working with the local nonprofits. If we know that Tuesday happens to be a very awesome night for a game of kickball, they could work with them to make sure that the facilities are open. So that way the facility isn't closed all the time. It's just about restructuring it, being dynamic about how we want to open it, and making sure that when the facility is open, we have somebody who's a paid personnel or one of those well-trained volunteers that can kind of step in and help make sure things are going well and the kids are having fun, or adults are all having fun. They would also help to increase utilization and structure new programs, hopefully in a dynamic way. Part of this, part of the facility is, economic development. And I know we're trying to find that happy medium between making sure that our kids and families can use the facility, but also making sure that we can bring people in from, bring people in from the outside to bring people into our city. We had a fantastic event. We have Firecracker Sports did a 2 or 3 day baseball event a couple weeks ago. They came into the area, they used our gas stations, they used the whole shebang, and we want to intentionally find people to come to use our facility. Right now, as I mentioned, I oversee the bulk of the rental schedules. I don't have the capacity to be able to intentionally recruit new people to come in to use the facility. And this is something that this person could take on. They can also, like I said, specifically work with nonprofits to make sure that they get the time that they need as well, and make sure they can fill out the proper paperwork and everything. The third piece would be to assist with the development of a more inclusive public recreation model so that more residents can benefit from recreation and leisure programs and structures. We have a great team right now, but as far as recreation goes in the city, our department should be doing a lot more, but we can't do more because of the bandwidth that we have with the 4.5 employees. So if we have this additional person, during the spring, summer, fall, they'll be on the turf, they'll be working with the communities outside a lot more. That leaves a lot more opportunities for November to March to be able to offer more community-related activity. Some examples would include assist in bringing back the Lewiston Public School System Elementary School Basketball League, offering free snowshoeing lessons using the Lewiston Recreation Department equipment. Schedule weekly middle school snow football activities, and get the word out with the relationships they've created with the nonprofits. That way we get good turnouts and everything like that. And the last piece would be to support existing Lewiston Recreation Department programs and events, but then also help us to create new ones. I mentioned at the bottom that this position would be not funded through the tax base. It'd be funded through Lewiston Recreation Department programming. We have been adding new programs every single month, and we hear from the public that there are more opportunities that they want. Typically, in a recreation department, you would find that there's a couple of full-time positions that are funded through the program revenue aspect of things. And that way, it'll be able to expand for more programs, hopefully keep the facilities open more. So part of their job would also be to help create programs that can generate revenue to kind of help offset their costs as well. I think that's all we have on our list for now.
Questions and comments, Councilor Pease?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to make a bold statement earlier, but I decided not to bring it. I had 6 bags of trash that I picked up just in Jade Park and the turf field for the soccer field, just in that area. And that was over a period of 3 days. I didn't do that because I've seen a big difference when the volunteers have gone down, they've helped. It's still there, but a lot better. So that is a big point for me, is that if the volunteer group can really come together and provide a cleaner field and protect the field, I have no problem with it. And I like your new restructuring. So keep up the good work. I hope you can find somebody that'll take that extra position. But we really definitely have to think about those fields on a dollars and cents and longevity. Thank you.
Let's say we did, authorize the hiring of somebody. When did we, given the process through HR and everything, recruiting a candidate, when did we think that this person might be able to start?
With the timeline, it would probably be, I would say mid-November by the time things actually got approved and there was a posting and everything. I don't have an exact timeline, but does that sound accurate?
That sounds reasonable, because what would need to happen is at your next council meeting, you would, if it's the desire of the council to move forward with this new position, you would actually have to appropriate funds to do that, because the rec program fund is actually an approved budget that you guys approved annually.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So first off, wow, tremendous amount of work and a great job that you've done here, really thinking outside the box, looking at all the aspects that could be done. I'm really impressed. So I want to go back, Megan, to what you had stated, and particularly about what happened and what Director Fuller has said. So we're looking at, because of what happened after the cleanup and then the following night, there was some more damage that was done. Are we looking at locking it down now until we have this all set in place, and then moving forward? Because I want the community to understand, if that's going to be the case, then they need to understand what's happening here in the interim until we get this all put in place. Is that what you were saying?
That's correct.
Okay. So as of right now, that means that the athletic fields would be locked down. They're locked down right now, and we're going to wait till we get more, the volunteers set up and this regular process going?
I would say yes. So again, by the time the onboarding period comes, then all of a sudden we'll have winter. That would give us a solid amount of time to develop a good, format to unleash something into, once spring comes around. It'll give us a couple months to kind of really put together a solid calendar, put together a plan and implement something. Hopefully that'll be, lasting for the entire season.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if I shared this, but there were 30 volunteers. We captured about 20 volunteer forms that were completed. Those need to be processed. And I think, again, having another event, we could maybe acquire some more volunteers.
I think that's fantastic, and I'd like to also thank Director Fuller for your time and helping us coordinate through this and work through this process. Thank you all.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So you're saying the fields are currently closed to the public and will be for the rest of the summer?
I believe they're currently open.
They're open now, yes. Like I said, I went on there, I went on Monday morning, and all the gates were open. There were practices going on, so
So this change to close them, when will that start?
when the policy gets approved, right?
If is it included in the ordinance? It would be 30 days after the second reading. It would go into effect.
So first reading will be September 5th, second September 19th,
We had a
18th.
first reading, didn't we? We had a first reading, didn't we? Didn't we already do? Yeah, we had a first
Yeah,
reading.
did we,
Had first reading.
Yeah.
But it depends on what you decide, and we'd have to go back through to determine substantial
changes, right?
changes or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But once that does go into effect, people will be able to, there's a process for, let's say someone wanted to, even if they weren't necessarily an incorporated group and they wanted to go play soccer or something, how would they go about reserving or getting access?
If you find people who want to do that, definitely have them reach out to me. There have been times where there have been groups who want to get something going, but they either don't have the COI or they don't have enough people to really have a larger league. We can loan out equipment. We can create an internal program that can also kind of support their needs. So there are definitely ways to get access to the fields. We just got to kind of be a little bit creative. And if we can support them as a staff, make sure they have the equipment and first aid kits and everything, that's something we can set up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And give,
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, COI is the certificate of insurance.
thank you, Administrator Hunter. Thank you. And it sounds like once we get past whatever number of readings it will take, and then the 30 days after that, it will probably start getting cold outside, and we might have snow on the ground by that time anyways.
Let's hope not, but that's probably
Well,
correct.
yes. Further comments or questions from the council? Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier the cost of the field. When was that installed?
2017, 2018.
And we're looking at putting it on an LCIP on 26? So we have less than a 10-year life on that field? Is that what I'm understanding?
That's
Is that the norm? I guess that would be
10
my
to
question.
15 is what we understand to be the norm.
10 to 15 is the norm.
And this new estimate is based on a 10-year life expectancy. The new estimate.
Lovely. Okay, so the other question I have, it's not necessarily the problem, we're not having problems with nonprofits and people that are renting the facility. We're having problems with it being unlocked and people just showing up and using the facility. Is that correct?
Yes, people who are renting the facility, we have ways to get a hold of them. If there is any damage or, a lot of trash, we can get a hold of them. We know who they are.
Okay.
And they know up front what the expectations are.
So this is a lot of work, excellent, but I don't know if we're addressing the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the general public that's just showing up and using the facility. I like the idea that holding off until you have a good volunteer base. And one of my suggestions would be is just say, okay, let's open it on Tuesday nights or a Wednesday night. Let's just try that one night and learn how to walk before we run. I'm not in favor of just opening up the facility and saying, okay, there you go. And I just question whether we have enough of a volunteer base. And I'm concerned on a $2.6 million every 10 years. we have to protect those fields. And so I guess that's where I stand on it. Thank you.
Further comments from the council? Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can agree with shutting them down until such time as we get volunteers to go in and take care of the fields. I mean, the things that have been happening there just shouldn't be happening. We've got to do something about it. Talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, we've had break-ins, people picnicking and leaving their garbage behind, all sorts of different things. So I think we need to close them down until such time as we have a solid plan. I suggested that last month. So it's come around, here we are again. We've wasted a month, but let's go for it and let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further, Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you. I also support closing it down until we're in good hands, but I also would request that I come back before the council and have the council make that decision on whether to open it or not.
Well, I think depending on the feedback we got tonight on September 5th, that'll revisit the first reading of the ordinance.
Right, but what I'm saying is the way I want it handled is when we close it down, before it's reopened to the general public, that you come before the council again, and it's the council's job to go over everything that you have and make the decision whether we want to open it or not. Because I am really concerned about $2.7 million. If we're going to replace it in '26, that's only 8 years we got out of it. 8 years, that's $350,000 a year it costs us for that's real money, $350,000 a year. Now, if we were supposed to get 15 years or we were supposed to get 13 years and we only get 8, that's costing us an extra $175,000, roughly $200,000 a year it's costing the taxpayers, keeping the field open to the general public rather than keeping it closed and using it just for the school events and the nonprofits and the scheduled events. So that I'm really, really concerned from a taxpayer perspective that, that's real money. So I'm really hesitant. Thank you.
So are you, Administrator Hunter, Director Welsh, are we looking for direction about whether to move forward with hiring this coordinator? I don't know what the
I think
position will be.
we've got enough of feedback, and, that'll be on the agenda on the 5th, that you'll take the formal action. And if further discussion is needed at that point, we can definitely talk about it more at that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief St. Pierre, thanks for joining us this evening.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, please proceed, and and if I can get the council to hold questions until the end.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to get through this quickly. What I really hope to do tonight is to just kind of give you some information as to where we're at. I'm sure most of you are aware that we had a tragic incident that claimed the lives of 2 of our community members back on July 30th. Because that happened, there were some press releases that went out. We did do a press release. I also did a press conference where all of the members of the press were invited. Hopefully, most of you got to see it. But I wanted to let the public know, as well as you know, where we're at, safety things, safety concerns that we're working on, dispelling maybe a couple myths or not factual information. So I'll make it quick. That day that happened, it happened at 10 o'clock in the morning, or just after 10 o'clock. There was some talk that it took us a long time to get there. I can tell you that we were there in less than a minute from the original first call. There were also some other comments that came out through social media or otherwise that indicated that the body was left uncovered for an extensive period of time. That is simply not true. In camera reviews that I've looked at, that all of us looked at, body camera reviews, et cetera, that the body that remained at the scene for a little while was covered in less than 35 minutes at the most. Now, that's including United Ambulance tending, and the police department tending to the victim's injuries. You know, it's important to note that when a heinous crime like this happens, we have to wait for the Major Crimes Unit to respond. It becomes their scene. It also becomes our duty to preserve and protect that scene. As such, we are unable to move a body. So the body was there for a few hours. I certainly admit that. It does take some time for us to place the calls to the Major Crimes Unit, for them to gather people, particularly on a Sunday. They might be having a picnic with their family or you know, wherever they are, coming from different parts of the state to respond. We follow a death protocol, and we have to follow that. We cannot move a body unless there's an absolute emergency, such as, let's say it's in a burning home, or there's a flood and we're at risk of losing evidence. That's the only time that we can remove a body. It's right on page 1 of the death protocol. So we did cover the body quickly, or as quickly as we could. We also have a duty to preserve any evidence, and there was evidence. Obviously, there was a shooting involved, so there was shell casings on the scene, there was shoes, cell phones, or whatnot. So all of these things have to be protected in order for Major Crimes to come and document that scene, photograph it, get the drone up. It is quite a lengthy process. When we got there, we were met with some adversity. There were several people that encroached upon the crime scene, which created its own set of challenges. We had to utilize the Androscoggin Sheriff's Department, as well as Auburn PD personnel, as well as pretty much all of our manpower to get there and keep people back. The Somali community did come forward and really help us out. There was a couple people in there that I praised right from the start and thanked them up and down, and I continue to do so. What I want to say is that immediately following this event, I reached out to both imams and many of the community members of the Somali community. We've discussed problems, concerns, and we're going to continue to discuss those problems and concerns. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow that's scheduled from noon to 2 at the New Mainers Public Health Initiative on Lisbon Street. So what we want to do is we want to work with the entire community as the police department, and we'd like them to work with us. It's very important that the police can't do it on their own. You know, we need the community to step forward. Going forward with this, there's a lot of questions like, is Lewiston safe? How many shootings did we have? Now, I put that out to the news that we had, since January 1st, 29 shooting events that we had. That doesn't necessarily mean there were 29 victims of a crime. That just goes to mean that we can prove that a shooting incident occurred. So if you take those 29, I think one of them that I mistakenly put in there was a gentleman who shot himself while he was cleaning his gun. So certainly that's not a crime, it's an accident. There were other 5 incidents that happened out on outer No Name Pond area where an individual shot into the woods from a vehicle. So that's 5 different occasions of that 29. So obviously that's not a crime against a person, though it is illegal, so that person has been charged with that. In fact, maybe 2 of the other 29 involve this same person, and we're looking into that as well at this time. The majority of them involve people posturing or shooting into the air. It's all concerning to us, very concerning. Because what goes up must come down, right? And there's always the danger of somebody getting struck with an errant bullet. So I don't want to downplay, the significance of all of this. It is concerning to us, very concerning. We've beefed up our patrols. I have a lot of people, a lot of officers that are doing regular walking beats down in the Knox Street area, through the parks. I can tell you with our Neighborhoods First initiative, we're doing more proactive patrols than I think I can remember in the history of me being a police officer for 31 years. So anyway, getting back to, we have this meeting tomorrow, and I think that's going to be the first of perhaps many meetings, but that's where we're starting with the Somali community that wants to express some of their concerns, their fears, and they want to work with us, and we want to work with them. So that's step 1. Step 2, or another meeting that we have planned, is at the Connor Elementary School on August 24th. That's from 5 p.m. to 6:30. and that is for the larger community. Anybody that wants to go will certainly be welcome.
You said 5 to 6:30?
Correct. Yeah. So it'll be in the cafeteria at Conner Elementary on that day. And I'll just open it up to questions now, because I know time's limited here.
Questions, comments from the council? Yes, Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for coming tonight and, like you say, just kind of trying to dispel or debunk some of the myths or rumors. And I appreciate the breakdown of the 29 shootings, and again, don't want to play them down. They're all serious for sure. But I wonder if there's been, well, we're hearing that, and there's definitely been communication with us directly. Has there been an article or anything like that released to the general public, just breaking that down? Because I think what happens is people hear, oh my goodness, 29 shootings, that's Lewiston, and I feel like we need to try to clarify that, because you bring some really important points up.
No, it certainly has been clarified, Counselor, and in that press conference that I had, I spoke with 6, 8, 13, the Sun Journal, they were all there. We had an extensive conversation. They put it out. We put out a press release to indicate that as well, so that is out there, and I can probably get it for you and provide. I know I can get it. I have it.
That's fine.
So I can certainly provide that to you. We pride ourselves on remaining transparent. There are times that we can't just tell you everything right from the start. This becomes the state police's case when there's a homicide such as this, and we have to respect that process. Even going to the press release that I did several days later, or the press conference, I should say, I had to talk to the state police and say, do you mind if I say this? Are you okay if I say this? This is through and through their case. The case is closed. You've probably read their latest press release where there was actually, there was 2 victims that are deceased and then one other that was involved that actually did some shooting, but he's been cleared by the Attorney General's office.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you for all your hard work, and commend your department. I'm sure this has made a big difference in the last few months with the added patrol that
I'm in hopes that it has, yes, absolutely.
I understand that you're doing a comparison between Portland, Lewiston, and Bangor on similar shootings or whatever the case may be on violence to show that we're actually...
It's a little bit informal, but they're experiencing the same problems that we are. And again, I certainly don't want to downplay that or say, hey, we're no different than anybody else. I want to be different than everybody else. I want to be that community that feels safe, and I'm doing everything that I can as your police chief. And my guys, my staff, I can tell you are doing extraordinary efforts every single day to try to make that happen. They're out there talking to people. They're out there trying to make people feel safe. But what it comes down to is we need the community's help in order to be successful in this challenge. It is a challenge for us. But a lot of these shootings that we're actually having victims that are saying, I'm not telling you who did this. I know who did it, but I'm not telling you. For whatever reason. Some of it is street cred, some of it is whatever you want to call it. Some of it is fear, that they fear that there's going to be retribution and it's going to be directed towards them. So I understand all of those obstacles, and what we need to do, or what I need to do as the police department, is try to alleviate some of these fears and work with the community as best I can.
So one other question that I have for you, and it's the effect on the morale of the police department. I know when we first became counselors, we all went through training just in case if there's an emergency, and chain of command and so on and so forth, that we're not in the chain of command at that point. Now we're in the loop. And this is more of a question to you and a statement. I was very disappointed with some of our elected officials that are sitting on this board right now making comments and demands about this situation in the moment. And I think as good leaders, we need to keep our mouths shut and let you do your job and get the information after and calm the people down, not excite the people and throw flames on it. And I know that happened. And I got a call from the union president that came down and saw me. What was the feeling of the police department on feeling like they're getting it from both sides.
Well, what's difficult for us is there's many times I'd like to actually just tell everybody what happened because it'd be so much easier. But again, I can't do that, and the integrity of the investigation is of utmost importance. You know, what if we drop the ball and we say too much, and then the case gets dropped? That's what our people are afraid of. They really, not afraid of, it's concerning to us. If we put out too much information and then all of the information is out there, and then we seek a witness, well, how did you know that information? Well, you know, we saw it on the news. You know, so we can't put out everything. There are investigations that are open right now involving some shootings that I still can't talk about because they're active investigations. I think we're going to connect the dots on many of these, but if I start just telling everybody every component of the investigation, I'd be remiss to, I can't. I just can't. I'd like to. I'd like to keep everybody informed, and transparency is important to me.
Thank you for your service.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. You made a statement about, you know, you're talking with other towns and cities and seeing, and you're telling us that they're in the same boat. From what I've observed, since I've been on the council, the amount of work you've done for what the staff you had to start with and where you're at today, I can see these towns starting to come to us and saying, hey, how did you do it? Because you're doing an exceptional job. It's difficult, and people don't understand just how difficult that is. It's like you're saying, I can't say anything. Well, it goes back to when I was in school. If you take the first person at the desk and say, tell them a line and have them pass it along, when it gets down to the end, it's totally different. It's like nothing to do with anything. So that's why I can see understanding what you're saying is your information that you're trying to achieve and find is critical to these cases. And if you let something out and they start passing it out like rumors, you're not going to get your information you need. At least it's not going to be very accurate. So I would commend you and your team for all you do, and I appreciate you coming down this evening. And just keep up to your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't known that Councilor LaChapelle was going to speak to the point that he did. But to my colleagues on this council, when you make statements about safety in this city, not knowing what you're talking about, you're pouring gas on a fire, okay? There are many times, as Chief said, that you cannot find out. It's under a tight thing. I've been in this same seat that he's in. I know what they're talking about. This whole thing started back about 1972, I recall. The Attorney General took over major crimes, particularly homicides, and they put a tight wrap around it. He had to check before he could even make a press release about attendant things like the number of shootings, discharges, that sort of thing. So for somebody uninformed to jump to confusion and start making statements about we're concerned that there's no safety in our city does a great disservice to a great number of dedicated men and women that serve this city and serve this city well. And I think they deserve an apology from the individual that made those statements. Thank you very much.
Chief, I appreciate you reaching out to the imams and the BIPOC community, and yes, I think you're right. We need relationship building, and I think that's going to go a long ways to helping make Lewiston safer. Thank you. Further comments from the council? Oh, Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here, Chief. You do an excellent job, and we are behind you 100%. One of the things that is difficult is when you're being criticized and that the crime rate and everything happening in the city is being blamed on the police. No, the police are trying to do their best to stop crime and to find the criminals and get them incarcerated or get them charged. And a lot of the impediment to getting to that is the community at large. So I think it behooves the the community at large, those that are complaining about the police, to look inward and say, okay, how can we make the city safer? Because the police can only do so much. There's only so many of you. You can only be in so many different places. There's only the laws that you have to follow in investigations, sometimes hinders your ability to get to the truth. But I think it's important for the community at large to realize is that we have an excellent police force, and they need the support of the community to make the community safer. It's not the police making it unsafe, it's the community making it unsafe. And I appreciate all the hard work you do and all the hard work of your officers. I appreciate the letter you sent to us today that you received commending some of your officers. Unfortunately, that's few and far between because it's a lot easier to complain about something than to give credit where credit is due. So I'm glad you shared that with us, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Councillor Clement, did you have something?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, there's a term that goes along in policing, and I'm sure that a couple of people in this room other than myself understand it: enforcement tolerance. The community will support to a certain degree what you do for enforcement. They keep saying, we want this, we want this. They've just got to understand that they're going to have to help. There's only so many on our department here. We've got a large area to cover. There's a lot going on. So if they want more policing and better policing, they've got to get involved. Their tolerance is needed, and their help is needed. And that's community policing all the way around. The guy on the beat from 20, 30, 40 years ago knew everything that was going on. He knew everybody, he knew every house. Nowadays, we're mechanized. They're driving around in cars that are air-conditioned with the windows up. They don't hear everything that they used to hear. They're answering far more calls now. What'd you have the last month, 4,400 calls?
Yeah, I believe it was 4,400 right in that vicinity.
A month. There are many departments in this area surrounding us that don't have that in a year. So, you know, the people are busy, but they need help. And the people that complain are the ones that probably could be helping. Thank you.
Further comments? Anything you'd like to add, Chief?
No, I thank you for listening to me, and really, I think it's going to take all of us to, you know, the police department to reach out to the community more, and the community to reach out to the police more and be more involved. I think if both sides meet somewhere in the middle, and we can make this a better, safer place. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Chief. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here, and please tell your department thank you for us.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break, and we're going to begin in a few minutes. It won't be right at 7, but it will be awfully close to that. So we'll see you back here soon. Hello, welcome to our Lewiston City Council meeting this evening. If you can all please be quiet, that would be great. We're going to kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have Dave Bilodeau from Tri-County here, and he will lead us.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Bilodeau, and we appreciate your service. Do we have Dr. James Parakilis here? Yeah, yes, perfect. If you can join me up front, we will have Lewiston Lead's presentation. Hello? Hello? Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right. I would like to introduce Dr. James Parakilis, the current board chair for LA Arts. He joined the board of directors of LA Arts in December 2015 and has been chair of the board since 2017. Jim taught music at Bates College for 37 years, retiring in 2016 as the James L. Moody Jr. Family Professor of Performing Arts. I'm sorry that we cannot have a grand piano for you here this evening, but during his time as chair, the organization has embraced its role as arts agency for the cities of Lewiston and Auburn, developing close working relationships with the city administrations on a great variety of projects. The LA Arts Board of Directors, meanwhile, has assumed a greater responsibility for the day-to-day workings of its organization in collaboration with its one employee, the arts agency manager, Gerald Walsh. Under Jim's leadership, the board has increased the organization's focus on promoting the work of the remarkable creative artists living in Lewiston and Auburn, artists working in the visual, musical, literary, dramatic, and dance fields. LA Arts is working to allow these artists, as well as others arts and cultural organizations, to engage more fully with the Lewiston and Auburn public. They are creating collaborations between the arts and other fields, with the aim of bringing challenging, uplifting, and transformative experiences of the arts into people's lives. Jim led the charge for the new LA Arts Gallery and Performance and Meeting Space at 168 Lisbon Street in Lewiston that opened earlier this year in January of 2023. This bright and spacious headquarters welcomes everyone into the community to meet and commune together as they experience a great variety of artistic events. Besides his work with LA Arts, Jim performs as the pianist of the Buttonwood Trio, along with violinist Mary Hunter and cellist Phil Carlson. They perform at the Olin Arts Center and Franco Center in Lewiston, as well as other concert halls in Maine. Jim is also the keyboard player of the Mid-Coast Symphony Orchestra. Dr. James Parakilis, you have led LA Arts during a pivotal time, and we are thankful for your dedication, not just to LA Arts, but also to Lewiston. Through your leadership and guidance, LA Arts has become stronger than ever. I am proud to present you with a Lewiston Leads Challenge coin this evening. Do we have Paul here? Come on up, please. And then, yes, he's bringing his friend Martin. Martin, it's good to see you. Pronounce your last name for me.
Tshiunza.
Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking about boxing and a few comments here. Lewiston has a long history with boxing. Who remembers Joey Gamache, who won world titles in 2 weight classes in the 1990s? And then there's Paul Jr. Labe, who was inducted into the Lewiston Auburn Sports Hall of Fame in 1985. And of course, the phantom punch of Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston in what is now the Coliseo. It's an evening that is still talked about today. And now, helping to cement Lewiston's role in the history of boxing is resident Bopol Tshiunza? Yes. All right. As he is known in his new hometown as Paul. At the age of 17, Paul began boxing in a gym in South Africa. In 2018, he was deemed most disciplined boxer of the year in Johannesburg. He fought in the Arnold Schwarzenegger tournament in South Africa, and in 2019 won the Johannesburg Championship of Boysense Boxing Club. He had 18 amateur fights in South Africa before moving to the United States in 2021. He connected with the Lewiston Congo Boxing Club, where he continues to train. And on April 21, 2023, he won the International Boxing Federation amateur fight in the King of the Ring tournament in Boston. He is now looking to go professional. Please join me in congratulating Paul for his boxing accomplishments and wishing him well in his future career endeavors. And so we have a certificate here that I'll just quickly read. This certificate is presented to Bopol Tshiunza in recognition of his April 2023 International Boxing Federation title at the Boston King of the Ring tournament. He is also commended for the numerous titles and championships won both abroad and in the United States since he began boxing in South Africa at the age of 17.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. All right, Mike. Get that back. Get that back.
Getting violent over there? All right, thank you.
And now we have the student youth gardeners from St. Mary's Nutrition Center. If you can all come up here and join me with Sophie as well. Do we have two staff members or? Oh, okay, all right. Sophie Wersch-Farnham, we need you up here, please. Sophie has been gardening with students all program long here, and we appreciate your service. All right, so we have a proclamation here. Whereas the Nutrition Center serves as a hub for healthy food initiatives in Lewiston and beyond, and whereas the Nutrition Center began as a project to help transition some of Lewiston's unused lots into community food access opportunities, and whereas since 1999, Lots to Gardens has transformed over a dozen vacant neighborhood lots into thriving urban gardens used by community members, schools, and youth gardeners in the Nutrition Center's training programs, and whereas the gardens produce fresh fruits and vegetables, contributing to city neighborhoods and removing barriers to accessing fresh foods, and whereas the gardens also act as outdoor classrooms for community engagement, neighborhood pride, empowerment in the care of communal city space, and whereas gardeners learn to respect and value differences, appreciate others' culture, and cultivate lifelong friendships. And whereas a cornerstone program for the Nutrition Center is its Summer Youth Gardener multi-week program that enables 12 young people to tend the gardens, cook fresh food, much of which has been harvested from the gardens, and learn about the local food system and food justice. And whereas, in addition to connecting young people to growing and harvesting food, they also gain valuable workforce development. And whereas this summer's youth gardeners are Layla Saeed, Fox Barnett, Parker Jamuzek, Jermaine Omasombo, Zeynep Seydali, Maya DeRose, Abdullahi Abukar, Alana Sena, and Kendall Jackson, who have diligently worked in Lewiston's communal gardens. Now, therefore, I, Carl L. Shalene, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, officially proclaim August 15th as Lewiston Youth Gardener Day and thank participants for their commitment to maintaining community communal gardens. Thank you very much.
Get you that. Ready? 3, 2, 1. One more. 3. I know, right, guys? Come on. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thank you all.
Madam Clerk, I believe we're ready to begin.
Okay, the roll call for tonight will begin with Counselor from Ward 3.
And it's my understanding that we will move the minutes to another meeting.
For the September 5th, yes.
Excellent. We are now up to public comment. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston City Government. This period is reserved for non-agenda items. Public comment is also allowed during individual agenda items. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name for the record, and please indicate if you are a Lewiston resident. Because this is the business meeting of the City Council, all questions should be directed to the mayor, who will ask staff to follow up at a future time. It is illegal for the City Council to allow comments related to personnel matters. All personnel complaints should be made directly to the City Administration Office. Did you have a question?
I have a comment.
Oh, please step up to the podium. Yeah, right over there.
I'm Joan Villani. I live in Lewiston. I went to pay my tax bill this week, and this came from you, Mayor. Lewiston seniors offered property tax relief. Okay, we had a property tax freeze, seniors did. And I went to pay my tax, and I had my form all filled out for next year. She said, no, there's no more of that. That's been discontinued. And so I sat down and I wrote a letter. Are you kidding me? You discontinue the property tax freeze for seniors? Us seniors don't have children in schools, yet we got stuck with the expense of more schools being built and expanded. We had no say in the influx of population explosion that arrived on our doorsteps, needing assistance. And we still do sometimes. We very generously are still helping with this assistance in some cases. Now there's this the Ramada Inn. Sorry, did you hear everything I said already?
Yes.
The Ramada Inn thing looming, we don't know about that yet. Although I did hear on the news tonight that we're going to get part of the asylum seekers that have to vacate Portland. Some are going to Freeport, the others are coming to Lewiston. So since January, over 1,000 asylum seekers have arrived in Maine, which continues to grow, also needing assistance. We taxpayers think we have reached the point of saturation. Saturation means unable to absorb more dependents beyond capacity. Many are homeless and jobless. This is when crime rises, okay? We are not the brother's keeper of the world. This country isn't. Another thing, why are able-bodied people getting paid to not work? I don't understand that. All the businesses, so many businesses you go to, they've got signs, now hiring or need help or whatever. Haven't you noticed the signs all over the business doors? Those jobs are being held by people at one time, but they figure it doesn't pay to work. So, you know, please don't indulge us by saying that we need these migrants to fill the jobs. I don't buy it. That's all.
Thank you. Deputy, if I can have it quiet in the council, thank you. Deputy O'Malley, do you still have my card there? Okay. Do you mind handing her a card? Thank you. And if you can call the office tomorrow, I would like to follow up with you.
You'd like to follow up with me?
Yes, tomorrow. Yes, if you can call me, that would be great.
Can I call you in the morning? I have to be somewhere.
Yeah, anytime you'd like.
Okay, I have to
Thank
be
you.
somewhere later in the day.
Further public comment?
I will state that I'm only a Lewiston resident. I will not state my name or address due to the fact that I'm already being harassed, intimidated, and most recently have actually had my life threatened twice. I am here to speak upon the illegal group homes that are now absolutely bombarding our neighborhood, and specifically the one directly right next door to my house. You guys are all complicit in allowing this to happen because you guys are not doing anything. This transparency you guys speak about, there's nothing. You guys are my last stop. I've been to the state, I've been to Adult Protective Services, I have been everywhere. I'm sorry to bore you, Mr. Shaheen, okay? This is very important. The staff that are next door and taking over all of these group homes in town are all non-speaking Somalian, Nigerian people taking care of broken down, homeless people, drug addicts that need help, and mentally disabled people. These people that need this help and that are in these homes getting the said help are not getting the help they need. They're being actually enabled to continue this in the behavior allowed by you guys. The people next door to my house are actually doing drugs out in the open and actually engaging in activities with the children, 2 minor children up the street. What are you guys gonna do about it? The cops' hands are tied because it's not their fault. I can't even name the people that are harassing me because there's so many next door. I've counted at least 19 people. Adult Protective Services is doing nothing and is actually admitting on tape that there is more people next door than there's supposed to be, but oh, whoops, it's safe, no need to worry, even though I'm seeing with my own eyes drugs being brought in, bongs being walked down the street, and actually being used by children next door up the street. So now not only do we have all of this stuff going on, what are you guys gonna do about it? Within my house, there are 6 homes just up the street. Since my report to Adult Protective Services, I have been absolutely, the harassment has gone tenfold to the fact that it's actually affecting my kids because now they're being stared down and intimidated because of what's next door because I'm speaking out because it is absolutely illegal. When are you guys gonna actually stand up and protect the actual legal paying taxpayers of this city? You guys all wanna talk about transparency and holding hands and all this other stuff? You guys are doing everything to support that side, and you're forgetting everything about this side and the people on this side of it that are being affected wholeheartedly with all of this. But you guys clearly wash your hands of it all because, oh, we're trying to do transparency, which none of you guys do. All right. Public records don't work because the owner that lives there doesn't live there. So I have no names of the business and the people that are harassing me, and I can't find none of that business. So to you unelected, only selected people, it's only a matter of time before all of us actually step out of our sleep chambers and wake up, and it's only a matter of time before all of you people will be held accountable, because we're done. We're done with this. You guys are trafficking, and you guys are absolutely complicit in the exploitation of what's going on. Thank you. And Mr. Langley, you're off the hook. I'm not here to speak to you about the porn books you put in school.
Brian, can you give her one of my cards? Further public comment?
let me just start by saying that I am shaking so bad I'm ready to puke because
A little bit louder.
this is also my last resort. I am standing up here shaking. I am trying to be as, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tshiunza, about the returning calls and call in the morning. I have left you numerous telephone messages, a couple of emails. I've commented on your post on Lewiston Rock since you were very vocal on there. Where's my phone call back, Mr. Tshiunza? What are you doing for me? I see you post about local restaurants all the time. That's great. I love that you support local business. And my question is what else do you do in the city besides go out to eat? Because let me tell you, I sat out in front of the housing authority on Lisbon Street yesterday for 2.5 hours and held up a sign that said, audit Lewiston housing because they are perpetuating homelessness, okay? You post about all the art in the community and everything else. What else do you do? And I promise you, I'm not trying to be mean, but I need to know. I'm homeless. I had the lady from the housing authority reverse my housing voucher decision because she didn't get the information she needed. Really? Well, I think that's pretty funny because I have enough evidence and people to back me up that says otherwise. She never got back to me. It's a whole other story, but let's talk about that. Where's the accountability? Because I'm not the only one it's happened to. So she can get away with this? No accountability? What about the homeless pods? What about the winter? What happened to those? What happened to 139 Park Street? It's time somebody gets into the Lewiston housing and okay, I do have to address the police department, and I will be as nice as I can, but I am homeless, and I do have to say from my personal experience, some of your police officers are not doing the best they can. I was at the Park and Ride one night, it's about 9:45.
Excuse me, if you're going to be talking about city employees, you need to direct that to the city administrator. This is not the venue for that.
Oh, well, I apologize, but with that being said, I would like to say that they are not doing what they should for the city
Excuse me.
either.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But with that being said, it would be nice to see some things get done with the homeless population around here, and the solution is shelter. Stop passing the responsibility. Everybody wants to pass it off to somebody else. Stop it. Somebody be an advocate. Right now, it's me. I can't be the only one. Why doesn't everybody come together to get a common ground so that we can get a solution to get people into shelter? That's the solution. I don't care what you do. If you can't give people stability, they're never going to be able to get off the streets. And a lot of these people don't even start drinking and drugging until they've been homeless long enough and they've lost hope because the city council hasn't helped, and all you do is show them away. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Gina Moran, and I currently live in Auburn. I lived in Lewiston for 4.5 years in transitional housing. Transitional housing is housing. The Ramada project is really important.
Thank you, Councilor Clement. Sorry, we're going to be talking about agenda item number 9 later in the evening, and there will be public comment. You can give public comment for agenda number 9 later in the evening.
Okay, thank you.
This public comment period is reserved for items that are not on the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Clement.
Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor, and the good residents of Lewiston. I've been petitioning this past summer, and one thing I've noticed when knocking on doors is there's a common collective that law and order in the city needs to be restored on the tree streets and in and around the surrounding areas of Lewiston. Whenever I greet a voter on the door, I am running for mayor and taking out the paperwork.
I'm sorry, there's no campaigning.
No worries,
from
sir.
there.
I'm just advocating for the people that it is necessary to increase the size of the police force and the amount of beat cops. That's all, sir. Thank you, sir. And I would love to get lunch with you and address that in the future, Carl.
Thank you. Further public comment? Thank you. Public comment is now closed. We are now moving to a consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda tonight consists of 3 items.
Sorry, 1 second, Madam Clerk. Councilor
Just a point of
Clement.
clarification, if I might, Mr. Mayor. The first speaker tonight spoke of the property tax freeze. That was the legislature, not the city council that had anything to do with that. In fact, most municipalities in Maine were in favor of maintaining that. Apparently that didn't work. That worked better? Okay. The property tax freeze was not a city program. That was a state legislature. And it would be, I can't help that, ma'am. That came from somebody other than me. The actual bill that you're speaking of was passed by our legislature. Your complaint should go to the city's legislative delegation, which sits in Augusta. They are the ones that discontinued that program, much to the dismay of many municipalities in the state of Maine.
Excuse me, ma'am. Yes, you are receiving a little bit of a, Councilor Clement is talking about a little bit about what we were going to be talking about tomorrow, but feel free to call me and we can discuss further. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, let's continue with the consent agenda.
Consent agenda consists of 3 items tonight. Item number 1 is order authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deed for real estate located at 942 Main Street. Item number 2, authorization for the city clerk to cast the city's ballot for the Maine Municipal Association's Executive Committee and Vice President. And item number 3, order authorizing the sale of 30 Blake Street to Shauna Cotter for $5,000 and to have the city administrator execute the necessary paperwork, and reject all proposals received for 143 Pine Street.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Passage.
Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
We are now jumping to item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing on applications for a new liquor license and special amusement permit for live entertainment for the Colisée, 190 Birch Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application and special amusement permit for the Colisée, 190 Birch Street.
May I have Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Public comment on this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 5.
Item 5, public hearing on applications for a new liquor license and special amusement permit for live entertainment for LA Arts, 168 Lisbon Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new liquor license application and special amusement permit for LA Arts, 168 Lisbon Street.
So moved.
May I have a motion, please? We have Councilor Jelinas, seconded by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Thank you all for being here. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Item number 6.
Item 6, public hearing and final passage to amend the business license ordinance regarding license requirements for lodging houses. Requested action, that the proposed amendments to Chapter 22 business licenses, Articles 1, 2, 10, and 17 of the City Code of Ordinances pertaining to licensing of lodging houses receive final passage by a roll call vote.
Move for
So
passage.
moved.
We have Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Yes, Councilor LaChapelle.
At this point in time, I'd like to recuse myself from this topic because I'm heavily involved in it.
Duly noted, thank you. Further discussion from the council? Public comment on this agenda item? back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed by a vote of 7-0. Thank you.
Are we on item number 7?
Yes. item
Thank you,
7.
Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and final passage to amend the business license ordinance regarding license requirements for homeless shelters. Requested action, that the proposed amendments to Chapter 22, Business Licenses, Article 16, Homeless Shelters of the city's Code of Ordinances receive final passage by a roll call vote.
Councilor P, second by Councilor Clement. Discussion. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the part of this that I'm concerned about, and I said it last time when we talked about it, is the added language pertaining to financial capacity of shelters. And while I recognize we reached a compromise of really just looking at first-time applicants, it's interesting to me when I think about this because I feel like we just voted to amend business license ordinance regarding licensing requirements for lodging houses, and there was nothing in there about financial capacity. And I feel like there's other businesses too seeking licensure, and we don't have that language in there. As a council, we say that we want to make some kind of resolve for the unhoused. We want to figure out a way to make this, to help out. And so this seems a little contraindicated. And it also just feels like a double standard. It doesn't feel like we're not doing this for other businesses, and I don't understand why we're doing it for this. So that's my concern with this item.
Thank you, Councilor Jelinas. I share your concern, and I appreciate the Housing Committee's memo that is included in the agenda item. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I would agree with Councilor Jelinas, and as the Housing Committee laid out in their memo, not only is it's a double standard regarding other types of businesses and even other types of housing, it just seems like it's redundant and unnecessary because already, if anything going through a development review process with the planning board, they have to demonstrate financial viability. And also in the homeless shelter ordinance already, there's language that says the licensing authority shall have the authority to impose any conditions on a license that may be reasonably necessary to ensure compliance with the requirements of this article or to otherwise address concerns about operation. So it seems like we already have the ability to do this on two different levels. It just seems like this is redundant in addition to the double standard.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So I too appreciate what the Housing Committee put out for us, and I would agree in respect to this. And I also like their recommendation that if we do feel that it's necessary, that there is a relation to an applicant's financial capacity, that new language can be put in that applicants requesting a license for a new shelter or the addition of another shelter facility must demonstrate financial capacity to develop said facility. This includes both renovations to an existing structure or the construction of a new structure. I would prefer that that language be in there and that we were to remove the 8I. If there can be a revision done on that, that's where I stand on that right now. Thank you.
It would be my preference to not pass this, but if the council did want this in, yeah, I agree with Councilor Scott that this language submitted by the Housing Committee should be at least entertained and discussed, and I would welcome a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion that we table this item until we can have further discussion on the recommendation by the Housing Committee to include that such language as I just read.
I'll second that.
We now have a motion on the floor to table. Any discussion?
Move the question.
We now, is that a motion, Councilor Clement?
Yes.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Madam Clerk, have you been keeping track?
Mr. Mayor, who seconded the motion?
Councilor McCarthy did, yes. So we will proceed to a vote to move to the question.
You want me to read the roll?
Yes, please. Sorry, yes.
Sorry.
We're now voting. I apologize, Madam Clerk.
That's okay. Ward 3?
No.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
No.
Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 4 to 3.
Now we will immediately proceed to the amendment.
Not the
amendment. Yes, the move to table. Thank you. Thank you. Please call the vote.
We're voting on to table?
Correct.
Okay. Counselor from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
No.
Ward 5? No. Ward 6?
No.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
No.
Motion fails.
We are now back at the main motion here. Further comments from the council? Heading to public comment for this agenda item.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Padam, and I'm here to provide public comment on behalf of the City of Lewiston's Housing Committee. It's pretty much just a repeat of the memo you received, but for the public's benefit. Per your request at the July 18th, 2023 City Council meeting, the Housing Committee reviewed the language related to this agenda item. As we noted in our memo to you, we note the following. Applicants seeking a shelter license should not be held to a higher and different standard from other licensed entities. Given the complexity of funding sources required to operate a safe, accessible, and stable homeless shelter, the federally required Form 990, and an organization's annual report ought to suffice for a municipal review of an organization's ongoing financial viability to operate for licensure. Additionally, there are existing mechanisms for the planning board, the council, and city administration to request additional financial documentation for an applicant as necessary, including the planning board requires applicants to submit proof of financial capacity to move forward with either renovations of an existing structure or the construction of a new structure. Should the planning board's review of an applicant's financial capability fail to meet the council standards, Section 22-454 of the Code of Ordinances notes that the council and the city has the authority to impose any conditions on a license that may be reasonably necessary to ensure compliance with the requirements of this article or to otherwise address concerns about operations. Given each of these mechanisms, the Housing Committee felt that the addition of subsection 8I was unnecessary. Should the council still find it necessary to require documentation of financial viability, we recommend that documentation be required for the development, renovations of an existing structure or the construction of a new structure, of a new shelter facility. We recommend the following language. Applicants requesting a license for a new shelter or the addition of another shelter facility must demonstrate financial capacity to develop said facility. This includes both renovations to an existing structure or the construction of a new structure. This language ensures that an organization can meet the financial requirements necessary to develop a shelter facility congruent to other development requirements for housing. Thank you.
My name's Wendy McPike. I'm an Auburn resident and I own many multi-unit properties in Lewiston. I've come to a couple of these meetings, and it's a little infuriating to me that you have a committee to offer their time and their guidance and their recommendations to you as to what they believe is in the best interest of Lewiston residents and this item for housing. It's very obvious to many of us that there's 4 of you that don't want homeless shelters in Lewiston. And it's evident in a lot of the people that you serve, that you feel that way. So it's infuriating to me that you won't even take their recommendations to at least table and discuss at a later time. And I think that's wrong.
Excuse me, there is no, please be quiet, please be quiet. There's no outward signs of disapproval or approval in the council chambers. Thank you. Further public comment? Back to the council. Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to thank the Housing Committee for, taking a look at this and providing us with recommendations. I'm going to say it again. I feel like, given how that financial information can be found, given the existing mechanisms outlined, I'm just having a hard time understanding the rationale for why we're putting this language before a business that, before a business application that wants to do a homeless shelter. We're making it so much more difficult. And if I heard some rationale, I was hopeful to table it simply so that we could talk about it and I could get a better understanding. But I just, again, want to thank the Housing Committee for doing the work that they did on this.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you. I guess I had a question for Councilor Scott, if you don't mind asking. I'm just reviewing the proposed outline and just reviewing what is in 8I. It's basically saying the same thing. What am I missing? The verbiage, it's basically saying the same thing. So I didn't, if somebody can correct me or bring it to light, I have no problem with changing the verbiage to what the Housing Committee said, and I think we can do that right now because it's not a substantive change. So instead of tabling it and moving forward, just adopting this language in 8, this language right here, applicants requesting a license for a new shelter, that paragraph, and just replacing it with 8I.
I would be okay with
and
that.
And there's no, am I missing something on a, that's not a substantive change, is it, City Administrator? That's saying the same thing. It's just saying it differently. So I'm all in favor, instead of kicking this can down the road, they made that suggestion. I have no problem with adopting that. So, and I have no problem with making that motion. I guess I just wanted to open up to the fellow councilors to see if there's a problem. Well, I see people nodding their heads, so I guess I would make a motion that we just adopt the verbiage that was used from the Housing Committee. Applicants requesting a license for a new shelter or the addition of another shelter facility must demonstrate financial capacity to develop said facility. This includes both renovations and an existing structure or the construction of a new shelter.
I'd second that motion.
That we replace that verbiage with 2 and 8I. That's the one in question, is that correct?
If you can hold your second for just 1 second, Councilor Clement.
I'll retract.
Thank you. Councilor Scott and then Councilor McCarthy.
Yes, which is the only reason I suggested we table it, so that we could make sure that we were all comfortable with that language to switch it to that. And and if we don't have to table it in order to switch that tonight, I am absolutely comfortable with doing that.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that is different between the two is that this is requiring that they prove that they can, they have the operational capacity for the year, where the other one is just the ability to build or renovate. So there's a big difference between building and renovating, or building, renovating, and running it for a year. So that's the big takeaway, and I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the difference, because that is a big difference.
Mr. Mayor?
1 second, Councilor. Councilor McCarthy, were you finished?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Councilor Clement.
8I does not require anything but the first year.
Correct, but the replacement language says nothing about the funding for the operation for the year. It's just
For a new
renovation
shelter or
and
the
construction.
addition of a shelter.
Right.
A
For
new shelter would be a
construction.
one-time license. under our ordinance.
Councilors, one at a time. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Councilor Clement. Councilor McCarthy?
Yeah, but the original language said to funding for the first year, funding for operation, where the new language says nothing about operational funding, just the cost of acquiring or renovating or adding. So that is significant. I just want to make sure everyone understands the difference between the two. That is a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Clement, did you?
I don't see the major difference there at all, Mr. Mayor, so I concur with the amendment put forth by Councilor from Ward 4, and that will get this moved on, and we've settled something else.
Well, if I can hold your second for one more minute. Councilor Jelinas.
I was just going to say, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand the language put forth by the Lewiston Housing Authority, and would definitely be in support of voting this forward as opposed to what was contained within 8I.
Councilor Clement.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We now have a motion on the table. Councilor Scott, or Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I mean, this is an improvement. It addresses one issue, but there's still the issue of a double standard. I don't know of any other, any other businesses or facilities that have such language saying that they have to have this sort of financial capability. If they don't, then they don't move forward. But I appreciate the willingness to move on some of the issues. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, did you, there's a lot of discussion up here. Do you have the amendment straight, or what we're talking about?
I do.
The replacement of 8I in its entirety with the language from the Housing Committee?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Further comments on this amendment? Councilor Scott.
And just for some clarity, Madam Clerk, so if we vote in favor of that, that's just going to eliminate that 8I language, replace it with this language that was a recommendation for the Housing Committee, and we're done? That's the
Correct.
final reading, or do we
Correct.
have to come back again?
We will need to, we're voting on the amendment, and then we're going to vote
Vote on the final reading?
Correct,
Got it.
yes.
Okay.
Further comments from the council on the amendment? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
For the amendment,
Correct.
Counselor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Further discussion from the council on the main motion. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 9.
8.
8. Agenda item number 8.
Item number 8, public hearing and final passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 4, Establishment of Districts regarding a contract zone formerly known as 855 Lisbon Street and now known as 77 Essex Street. Requested action, that the proposed amendment to Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Article 4, Establishment of Districts for a contract zone amendment for the former Promenade Mall property located at 855 Lisbon Street and now known as 77 Essex Street from Highway Business District zoning district with conditions to the Community Business District with the limitations as proposed, receive final passage by a roll call vote.
May I have a
Passage.
motion, please? Councilor LaChapelle, seconded by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and if I can take a moment here before the next agenda item. There were a couple of individuals that spoke that I would like to speak with. If you can get my business card from our Deputy Administrator right there and then contact me, I'd be happy to discuss further. Madam Clerk, back to the agenda, and I believe now we are on number 9.
Item number 9, public hearing and first passage for an amendment to the Zoning and Land Use Code, Appendix A, Article 2, regarding transitional housing units, subject to Planning Board approval. Requested action, that the proposed amendment to the Appendix A of the Code of Ordinances, Zoning and Land Use Code, Appendix A, Article 2, regarding transitional housing units, receive first passage by roll call vote, and that the public hearing on said ordinance amendments be continued to the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting and is subject to Planning Board approval.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor LaChapelle,
Second.
second by Councilor McCarthy.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Clement.
at this time, I think my colleagues will agree that we've received a number of public comment about this particular issue dealing with specifically recovery houses and programs. While this ordinance amendment does not specifically include recovery houses, I'd like to offer an amendment, which I hope is a friendly one, that a amendment be made to the existing 6th sentence of this ordinance so as to read, the term homeless shelter includes transitional housing, but shall not include any recovery house or program.
Is that, please hold your applause. Thank you. If we can have it quiet in the council chambers, I would appreciate it. Councilor Clement, is that a motion?
That is a motion. Awaiting a second.
Second.
Friendly amendment.
Second by Councilor McCarthy. And now discussion on this amendment. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. What would be the definition of recovery housing or program? How would that be defined in the ordinance?
I have no definition, Counselor. I mean, we can sit here all night and drum things up, but I think from view across the audience here tonight, we all have a pretty good idea of what a recovery house is, serving somebody who has perhaps a substance abuse disorder. I'm not looking to penalize anybody who's trying to recover, okay? I'm not looking to diss any particular program or programs, but I think this, in common sense, would indicate that we're not against recovery homes. We have several here in Lewiston, I believe. But given the parameters of substance abuse in our society today, I am not looking to do anything to dissuade these people from getting straight. And I think this was one thing that was raised, I believe it was raised, if I'm not mistaken, by you in one of your comments back and forth over this issue, that recovery houses would be affected. I don't want to affect them, and I did not realize that when we got into this discussion. I have realized it since. I've read the comments. I think it's obvious from the people here tonight that that's their interest. So if we need to develop a black and white specific definition of recovery houses, then we can do that. But I think it's pretty much common sense. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Calling your attention to the administrator to comment.
Administrator, do you have something?
Yes, on your place setting tonight, there was a document provided by the Maine Association of Recovery Residents. If you will look at the, let's see.
I'm not sure that all of us received to this
All right, I'm
document.
passing it right now. Sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
we will be in a second.
Sorry. Under Maine law, recovery residents are defined as follows, and this is under 5 MRSA Section 20003 19-D. Recovery residence means a shared living residence for persons recovering from substance use disorder that is focused on peer support, provides its residents an environment free of alcohol, illegal drugs, and assists its residents by connecting the residents to support services or resources in the community that are available to persons recovering from substance use disorder.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Clement?
Thank you. Given that we now have this information that was sitting in the corner here and not distributed, that is what a recovery house should be. I would propose that as the definition, if that's acceptable, Counselor. Thank you.
If you can please silence your cell phones, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So I would be okay also with the definition of that being put in there, but I do have some concerns about, again, I'm going to reference our housing committee that made some suggestions and looked at this closely and talked specifically about unintended consequences, not only recovery houses, but housing for youth under 18, housing for youth 18 to 24, where another entity, like New Beginnings, holds a master lease in a market rate building unit on behalf of youth transitioning from homelessness to stable housing. They also had some discussion on, you know, a shelter must be ADA accessible, whereas many units used for transitional housing are in market rate buildings subject to no such requirements. I think that we have to look at this all a little further, and I would recommend, again, I know that this probably won't go over very well, but we need to table this and take into consideration what our housing committee gave us and make sure that we are legally compliant with all of these things. The last thing we want to do is do something that's going to go against federal or state law where it's ADA accessible, you know, or any of those things. I feel like we need to have a better understanding of that, and I am not comfortable giving this a yes vote tonight without having that full understanding on all of those definitions and adding more language. I'm personally a person that doesn't like to continue to add language. I wish the government had less. So before we do that, I would like to make sure that we have a better view of all of this. That's where I would stand on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. 1 second. Director Heidegger, are you here this evening? If you can join us at the podium, I have a quick question. So I realize we're, you know, possibly talking about a carve-out for recovery housing, but there are other transitional housing in the community. Like, how would that be affected from this ordinance? I'm thinking specifically of Veterans Inc. On Main Street.
Yep, there are existing transitional housing operations in town. So the way it's worded, they would fall under our definition of shelter, and therefore they would be subject to our licensing requirements for shelters.
You know, and I appreciate the effort to carve out an exception for recovery housing, but I'm struggling to understand why we need this agenda item at all. Councilor Jelinas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to just say thank you to Councilor Clement for putting forth that friendly amendment. That's really important, and I'm so thankful to all of you that showed up tonight. But I want to sort of call out again the work that the Housing Committee put forth, and I think that I think we have a lot to learn about what transitional housing really is and what it isn't, and so I think it deserves to be acknowledged. There's a difference between that type of housing. And I think what we forget about sometimes is transitional housing is often located in areas where people are paying rent. There's at least unstaffed housing developments. And I think about, like, if there's proposals being put forth for a transitional housing development, that's a whole lot different than a proposal being put forth for a shelter. And I'm having a hard time with those two being clumped together. Again, I'm thankful that we're looking at recovery residences being extrapolated from that, but I think we need to think about this bigger picture and realize that the impact something like this would have on, I'll just use the Veterans Inc. Business, for example. I also am having a hard time understanding the rationale behind this item. It doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't believe that these two types of housing belong together.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I also appreciate Councilor Clement's amendment. And I know he stated he didn't want to penalize recovery houses, but as Councilor Jelinas said, there hasn't been any reason given for this amendment. So I'm struggling to understand who is going to be penalized. Who do we want to penalize? Who do we want to affect by this amendment? there just hasn't been a reason given, and I just wouldn't recommend anyone vote for something without a reason given for it.
Councilor LaChapelle, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I appreciate all the comments from our fellow councilors, and I too am torn with some of the decision-making. And maybe it's time that we do the same thing that we did for the shelter ordinance, that we put a moratorium on any transitional housing that's planned to come into the city for a period of time so that we can review and define and go over everything. We have group homes that are opening up around the city in residential areas. You have somebody that's, the young lady, I don't know if she's gone already, that somebody purchases home and they put people in there, and then they hire somebody to come in and watch the people. Is that not a business that is happening in the middle of a residential area? We have, I know off the top of my head, 4 or 5 of them within the city of Lewiston, and now the young lady stated some of them. So maybe this is something we need to take a deeper look at, and before we start opening it up to anything, that possibly put a moratorium on it, so we have more time to review it. We got hit in the newspaper with a proposal at the Ramada Inn that I know my phone hasn't stopped ringing on, that's saying they are against, drastically against, that facility being turned into a transitional housing with the potential of more development in the back. So I would agree with Councilor Scott and Councilor Jelinas. I think maybe it's time that we just moratorium, let's look at it and review it, or we can pass this tonight and then come back around the mountain. I would just as soon put a moratorium on it and kill it for right now so that we have more time to study it. It's just, I guess I want the input from the council so we don't have to start going through motions after motions.
Well, just 1 second, if I may, councilors. So the issue was just raised about a moratorium, but it's my understanding that there would need to be legal notice for that and everything else. I mean, we just went through one last year. I have a little bit of experience dealing with one. Councilor Clement, did you want to weigh in?
Just to remind my colleagues on the council, this is but a first reading, so it does not necessarily mean it's in final form. However, now that the proposal for a moratorium is out there, certainly that's one way of addressing it. I mean, if we have to sit here and go through definition by definition by definition, I'm all for that. To the gentleman who spoke here earlier about penalizing, I don't think we're looking to penalize anybody. We're looking to regulate and make sure that what happens in this city happens in the best interest of this city. We're not a group to sit here and penalize. I take offense at that remark. Thank you. So, that being said, we can pass this first reading. We can ask staff to come up with perhaps some definitional things that need to be included or need to be extrapolated from the ordinance. We vote on this September 5th in final form. But, or we can do a moratorium. I'm open to either one. But I want to do it and do it right. The idea, I have received, I don't know, in the last 3 or 4 days, probably 40 comments from people circulating about the city. My own ward, the Ramada thing has kicked up a lot of comment. I know in other wards where I've talked to people, it's kicked up a lot of comment. And I go back to that night when a question was asked of somebody in front of this body about the Ramada. I'd like to buy it if I could. And then when accused of lying to this council, he said, oh no, I was purposefully opaque. Well, if I was doing a crossword puzzle and I looked for a 3-letter word that said purposefully opaque, I think I'd put in lie. So therefore, yeah, I think we ought to know about these things. This is a brand new term. It's come up before us. 280 units, if it can be accomplished. And there certainly are questions about that given code and different things. So one of two things, vote it through first passage tonight, ask staff to come up with definitions that they think are appropriate, or let's get an ordinance together for a moratorium and we will delve into this full-fledged and come up with something. council's choice. I can go either way on it. Thank you.
Councilor Herman?
Thank you. I mean, I would offer there's a third choice that we vote this down as well. But going back to the reason, so it sounds like the reason for this amendment is for the proposal at the Ramada property. It would have been nice to know that beforehand, but I also wonder if this will affect their program. I don't know. I mean, they have called it transitional housing in a broad sense of the term, but I don't know if this definition would affect that program. So if the intent is to kill that proposal, has this been vetted in such a way that it would do such a thing?
We were following what was requested of us to include it as the amendment at this point. And I would remind the council that this does go to the planning board as well, and they may have a series of recommendations and/or offer definitions, amendments, and so forth. So that is another step in this process.
Administrator Hunter, when does the planning board meet next?
28th.
So, and that would be
August.
before our next council meeting?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When it comes to a moratorium, is that just 2 votes by the council, or does that also have to go to the planning board?
It doesn't go to the planning boards, but it would be posted in 2 votes.
Okay, so the 5th and then...
The
what is it,
19th.
19th?
Yep.
Okay, so that would happen quicker than if we vote this in, and, because if the planning board gets involved, are you going to be able to turn it around between the 28th and the 5th?
So it can be something similar to what we did with the field usage ordinance, where we actually had a continuation for the public hearing and then workshopped it. So we can actually continue this until a meeting in the future, no later than, let's say, our meeting of September 19th, hear what the planning board has to say and actually workshop it on September 5th, and then take action on the 19th. That is another alternative.
And just for clarification, the action in that scenario, the action on the 19th, would that be the second final reading, or that would still be a first one?
It would depend on the number and changes to the amendments. If it's substantive, it would be first reading. Obviously, if it was just continuation with the definitions that we're looking at now, and maybe clarifying or adding some nomenclature that defines some elements that you've been discussing, then that could proceed as second reading.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Sorry, Councilor McCarthy.
So the reality is a moratorium would more likely than not take effect quicker than changing this ordinance. There's more bumps in the road passing it tonight and then hoping that we get it all together and get it on the 19th. And then if we still don't agree on some of that, it could get dragged on further, correct?
That is one option as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jelinas?
Thank you. I want to add that my concern with the moratorium, I understand the rationale behind, let's think this through a little bit, but my concern with the moratorium, respectfully, is that there's some really life-changing work being done by the recovery community in terms of homes opening, lives being saved. And my concern is every day matters. And I don't think we're in the business right now to be putting a moratorium when it comes to folks that are doing some really important work out there. And I happen to be privy to knowing about it. So maybe, I'd like to share that with you. Like when I say there's stuff being done all the time, there's stuff being done all the time. And a moratorium would put a halt on that. And I'm not comfortable with that. That doesn't rest easy with me. I'd be more inclined to, I know we have 1,000 options out there, I'm sorry, but I would be more inclined to, maybe pass this first reading with the, what did you call it again? Friendly amendment, and, removing recovery residences from the language of transitional housing, and trying to get more information forthcoming before the final reading. But I can't, in good faith, to people out there, I can't, in good faith, vote in a moratorium at this point. I support that.
1 second, Councilor Clement. Do we still have we have the amendment on the floor? Is that the current? Okay. Councilor Clement?
Just a clarification, it was a
Administrator
friendly
Hunter?
amendment, so it would be the full motion with that change inserted.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Clement?
Thinking about what has been said, the effect of a moratorium might be deleterious to the proposal, given the fact I believe that Lewiston Housing has to act on their purchase and sale. They have a drop-dead date of October 1st, I think it is. A moratorium might prevent them from doing anything out there. I don't want it to look like we're trying to penalize them. All I want to see is I want to see some type of structure. I want to know what's going on. I don't like this idea of coming to us at the 11th hour and saying, oh, we're going to do this. Or, yeah, we're going to do this, but it really means we're going to do this. So that's what I'm looking for, some type of structure. The council should have a say. People are amazed in talking to them that you people aren't going to have any say about that. No, the way it is right now, we don't have any say. The planning board alone will decide that issue. Maybe code will be involved, but the council has no say on the proposal that was introduced to us at our July meeting. So therefore, I would say no to a moratorium, given the second thoughts about that. Pass it first reading, direct staff to come back with anything they think that we might be harming, unintended consequences. I don't want to see collateral damage, but I don't want to see somebody being able to come in and just pop a definitional term on us and say, oh, it's not that, it's this. No, I think we have to find out what's involved. And I can't imagine anybody on this council would want to go into something like this blindfolded. This is our only hotel. It is not our only hotel, but it's one of 2 hotels in Lewiston. It's our only conference center. Okay? So think about the intended consequence. Look at the ripple effect of this whole thing. Vote your conscience. That's the way I intend to do it. I'll also vote the conscience of the people in my ward, which have been very explicit on this whole issue. But thank you.
For the public record, there are more than 2 hotels in Lewiston, and there's more than one conference center. Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I guess I'd also add that I was confused that the reason for this seems to be the Ramada Inn proposal, because at our last meeting, just about everyone up here sat here and sang the praises of that proposal and how it was so important. So I'm just confused as to what changed between then and now. I thought everyone was all gung-ho for it. My second point is other unintended consequences are that if we were to add transitional housing to the definition of shelter, we currently have a cap on the number of shelter beds, and I don't know how many transitional housing beds exist already in Lewiston, but it's probably going to take us well over that cap, which would mean that no more could be developed at all. There's, as other counselors have mentioned, there are all the requirements that are for new homeless shelters that would apply to these residences, such as ADA accessibility. If you wanted to put one in a triple-decker here, that probably would not be feasible. Really, it goes back to the homeless shelter ordinance was developed by the ad hoc committee, which I happen to be on. It was developed for homeless shelters. It wasn't developed for transitional housing. We didn't even consider transitional housing because we were told to develop an ordinance for homeless shelters. So to try to shoehorn this other type of housing into that, it just doesn't fit, and there's just too many pieces that don't fit transitional housing because it is a homeless shelter ordinance. So it just doesn't really fit. That's all I have for now.
We're going to head to public comment for this agenda item right now.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Padam. Again, I'm here to provide public comment on behalf of the City of Lewiston's Housing Committee. As we noted in our memo to the Council, homeless shelters are distinguishable from transitional housing. transitional housing is a technical term for a form of housing where a tenant enters into a time-limited lease or occupancy agreement for a rental unit. The ordinance regulating homeless shelters was developed for entities where a guest is provided temporary overnight accommodation free of charge. When applied to transitional housing, a range of provisions in the ordinance would result in potentially significant consequences. Such existing transitional housing includes, but is not limited to, housing for homeless youth under 18, recovery residences, housing for youth 18 to 24, where another entity holds a master lease for a market rate unit on behalf of youth transitioning from homelessness to stable housing. We appreciate that the council has voiced their support for more housing, and if transitional housing is included here, the number of these units could far exceed the ordinance's current cap on the shelter bed count. This provision alone could result in even less housing for people who are transitioning out of homelessness into safe, stable places to live. Many units used for transitional housing are in market rate buildings, making the following ordinance change requirements challenging at best to apply to existing transitional housing. Transitional housing locations in relation to the homeless overlay district and the proximity restrictions to daycares and schools. ADA accessibility requirements. Staff are necessary at shelters to meet all existing ordinance requirements. Staffing requirements in some of these transitional housing units are unnecessary and inappropriate. This ordinance change would also inhibit recovery residence development in Lewiston. This would result in significant and dire consequences for individuals seeking treatment, their families, and our community's public health and public safety. As the only state or federal funding source used in Maine for their development is HUD funding, which requires that recovery residences be transitional housing. These must be rental units where the occupant will have full tenant's rights and, along with any supervising agent or agency, full and typical responsibilities. The current ordinance's requirements for homeless guests could violate the rights of the people living in transitional housing. The only requirement of transitional housing, as a technical term, is the tenant's previous homelessness. The Housing Committee respectfully requests that city attorneys advise the council on whether the city can impose such rules upon tenants. For example, prohibiting alcohol use.
I'm going to need you to wrap up here.
For those 21 plus in transitional housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dr. Ron Springle. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Association of Recovery Residences. And I've been here since 5 o'clock, and I've heard a lot of things. And I've seen a lot of people in recovery come to this meeting because they were afraid. They were afraid that something that the council would do would affect recovery housing and the way that they live. And I've thrown away my remarks that I had prepared because I want to thank you for your consideration. Recovery housing is not transitional housing. It's recovery housing as defined in Maine state statute, which is what was provided to the council, and we appreciate that. The idea that people that enter recovery housing are housing insecure is understandable, but not everybody is. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and 10 years ago I had a recurrence of use. And I had a beautiful home in Wyndham. I was still paying a mortgage on it. I'm from Scarborough, by the way. And I decided that recovery housing would benefit me in my recovery. And so I lived in one in Portland for several months by choice, because it was the best thing for me to do. And when I was finished there, I continued a relationship with the people, with the men and women there. As a matter of fact, that experience led me to do what I do today in my retirement from medicine. So it's not always what we think. And so I encourage the members of the council and everyone to have a broad idea of what we think about when we think about recovery residents. I appreciate Councilor Clement adding that language. The only other thought I would have to that is to insert one word for your purposes, which is that word certified. There are recovery residences in the state. Currently, our organization works with 77 of them in 12 counties with 821 beds. A lot of them are here tonight. But we don't know about the uncertified houses. They operate on their own without a license. They operate under the radar. Some are okay, but how do we really know? Most of the public complaints that we receive from our website are not from the certified houses. The public complaints are about the uncertified houses, and we know that. Currently, the state of Maine allows for voluntary certification of recovery houses, but mandatory certification is not on the table, at least not now. It could be, and there's a few other states in the country that have adopted that, but very few. Most have gone the route of not licensing, not mandatory certification, but voluntary. There may come a time, though, that the state of Maine decides to do that. In the meantime, if you insert the word certified, when you talk about recovery residences, you will be allowing those protections that you're offering to those residences that have agreed to join an organization, to be inspected and certified, to be accountable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Johnny Clark. I'm the largest provider of recovery residents in Lewiston at this time. I'm also a certified alcohol and drug counselor and a person in long-term recovery. All my guys came here tonight because of fear of losing their housing. We have projects that are up right now that some of you are aware of that's providing future housing for people. We're not transitional housing. We have a program. They go to meetings all the time. There's peer supports there, recovery supports there, vocational rehab there, financial literacy there. We work programs. We just became level 3 certified at the Bartlett address. We were certified 2 before that, which means we'll be bringing in clinical services soon. And this would stop our project in its tracks with a moratorium. We also have a project for families and children that's coming up called Second Chances. It's imperative for what's going on right now in the city, especially the way the opioid epidemic is, for us to be able to continue our projects, or you're going to see a lot of deaths, a lot more. Thank you.
I submitted a video, but if you don't have that, I'll just speak. No video? Okay.
Yeah.
How you doing? My name is Thomas Platt, and I'm a resident at the Hand Up community. And I can tell you, I just did 27 and a half years in prison. And the only thing I did successfully in the last year is stay out of prison. And it was a rough. And it's because I have a real hard time adjusting. And it's because of the Hand Up House that I am now learning to adjust. It's not just a transitional, it's literally re-entry. I have so much peer support right here. And I'm literally a mess right now. But with the help of the Hands Up House, I've got my caseworker in order. I've got therapy going. I attend meetings every day. I'm starting to get more confidence about going out on my own in public and things like that. It's important. But I'd also like to quickly touch on something that your concern is with, because I do come from Portland, and I have been in those uncertified houses. And so I do agree with the MAR certification. I do believe those houses should be certified. But at the same time, you can't put a moratorium, because I have a kid right here, Brandon. He's trying to get into that new Second Chances house so he can reconnect with his kids. And that's a family, that's a first of a kind thing, putting families back together. Mm-hmm. That's recovery, that's reentry, and that's what we're about. I mean, I wouldn't be here right now. And if it was just a homeless shelter or a transitional shelter that I was staying at, yeah, I would not be standing before you right now. And that's just a fact, because the homeless shelters don't have the programs that the recovery houses have. And I was a 3-time loser. And without Johnny and these people in this room right now, I would probably be back in prison as a 4-time loser and doing life sentence, and that's just reality. I don't ever want to go back, but I needed help. And it's not, and this house actually also helps with mental health, because I have so many guys that have been through so much of the same situations. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe Carter. I'm the longest residing resident at a hand up. They opened about a year ago, and I've been there the whole time. Before that, I was at a lodging house, and I tried it for a while. I didn't do well. Okay? I didn't take care of myself very well. And I got really ill. I got life-threateningly ill. And I was still drinking on top of it. And I couldn't manage it. I didn't have an environment, a structured environment where I could learn and I could thrive and I could grow. And I got referred to Johnny Clark through the hospital. So I was in the hospital, you know? And I moved in and things changed. And I didn't do everything right. I made mistakes along the way. I probably still do. But there's a structure there and a support system there and a peer-to-peer system there that enabled me to fix one thing after another in my life. Okay, I'm far from perfect now, but I'm a lot better than I was a year ago. Surgery that I needed and I was incapable of getting to the point where it could be done has been completed now. That's been done. I can get up and move around. I can function. I can communicate. I can help the house. I can help my peers. I take care of safety in the house. You know, today I make sure that the people I live with are safe every day. You know, a year ago I wasn't doing very good at keeping myself safe. You know, I never really looked at being in I've never been in a sober house before. This is my first experience with it. And I've never really looked at it as transitional housing. I was in a boarding house. It didn't work. It was more transitional than this. There's 3 months, it's all I could do. And the environment and everything else, I had to get out of there. I had to get away from it. Okay, when I go home today, I know there are no drugs and no alcohol in my building. I know the room next door. They're not smoking in there, they're not using in there, they're not drinking in there. I know the room on the other side. I know it. I don't have to worry about that. You know, and it keeps me safe every day. And I'm improving. I'm tremendously grateful all the time. You know, I got my pet peeves I argue about. But overall, man, it's changed my life. If you put a moratorium on this, it stops us from doing this kind of work. If you tell people that...
I'm going to need you to wrap up your comments, sir.
If you tell people that recovery residences are just transitional, you stop this kind of work. And Lewiston needs this kind of work. They need this type of thing to turn around. That's all I got. Thank you.
Going forward, we're going to keep remarks to 3 minutes exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Bruce Nodden. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the Maine Reentry Network, formerly known as the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network. I'm also a member of the Maine Recovery Council, which is tasked with distributing funds from the opioid settlement, and I was also appointed by the governor last year to the State Workforce Board. Recovery residences for the hundreds of folks that we work with, releasing from prison, releasing from jail, participating in drug treatment courts, folks that we support, folks participating in family recovery courts. The recovery residences are critical to their recovery. As a person in long-term recovery myself, these are the people that I love. This is where my heart is. But I'm going to talk about where our heads are. putting on the State Workforce Board hat right now. We spend most of our State Workforce Board meetings with local business owners, statewide business owners, large corporations, talking about how we're going to expand our workforce. The folks that are getting out of prison and jail and folks that are in recovery are a very young group of people. We all know that we're the oldest state in the nation. I'm a 59, about to be a 60-year-old man, and in many rooms that I'm in, I feel like I'm a young person. We need more young people to participate in the workforce, and this is an untapped resource. Recovery residences are, and I wrote it down earlier, an incubator of change. And you've already heard some folks talk today about their lived experiences, but in the broader picture, these are folks that can contribute to the workforce, to our communities. Johnny Clark is an amazing example of someone who was in prison, who participated in drug treatment court, who, as he was in drug treatment court, was getting his education, got his CADC, because of his criminal record, had to go before the board to kind of beg for his license. The community stepped up to support Johnny, and now Johnny's making a difference for our programs here in Androscoggin County, and he's making a difference housing people in recovery. This is a critical piece of reentry because we don't have halfway houses in the state of Maine. Recovery residences are the de facto halfway houses for the state of Maine. If we don't have recovery residences, healthy, certified recovery residences, then these folks are releasing to this community a hub without any place to live. So I appreciate your listening to me today. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Todd. I'm a person in recovery. I get nervous talking to people, so see, here I go. About 12 months ago, 13 months ago, I was dying. I went from 150 pounds, 160, down to 108. Wound up putting myself into a hospital, Spring Harbor, because I knew about recovery. Recovery was planted in my mind long time ago. And when I got out of Spring Harbor, I went to St. Francis Recovery Center, and I got a real good foundation in recovery, and I got thirsty for it. And I didn't really want to go into a shelter. I didn't want to go into another transitional housing kind of thing, you know. I knew I needed more of a program. I needed something that would save my life. I died twice. But now I'm, you know, I used to be depressed all the time, sick all the time. But now this is like I just got a year clean. This is the happiest point in my life right now. I became a CCAR state registered recovery coach, which I never, you know, thought I could do something like that and maybe give back and help other people. But I also became an assistant director at a Hand Up Sobriety House, and most of my family don't live around here. So when Joey was up here speaking, he was speaking about like when he goes home, he knows there's nobody that uses drugs or alcohol. When I go home tonight, I go home to my family. That's how I look at it. I know all these people here on an intimate basis. I know Tom. I know all these guys right here in my group, and I love every single one of them. And, you know, in recovery, it's all about moving forward. And in life, I think in life, it's about moving forward and learning something each and every day. And I think we all could probably learn something from tonight. And, you know, don't make me go backwards, please. You know, I'm trying to help out this community. Our house is responsible for reversing 16 overdoses. we help out the community critter place. We volunteer in our community. We're about having block parties and having everybody here come out and hang out at a hand up and break bread with us, because that's what it's all
time.
about.
Thank you.
I'm Siri Cressy. I live in Lewiston. And have something I prepared. The continued attempts by some Lewiston City Council members to block more needed shelters for unhoused people, as well as transitional housing, are nothing but classism in action. Will some people, residents, probably, be uncomfortable with the visible, acknowledged existence of unhoused people and/or addicts near their own homes? Yes. Will those people still have homes to live in? Yes. Shelter is a requirement. Not feeling a bit of unease is not. It does not matter how much someone pays in taxes. It does not matter what neighborhood they live in. It does not matter what their income level is. It does not matter who they do or do not know. It does not matter what their profession is. It does not matter what their mental or physical health is. It does not matter how long they have lived where they do. It does not matter what their social status is. It does not matter how much money they have. All of those things fade into irrelevance next to the very real need for people to not have to spend another freezing Maine winter in tents on the ground. If the possibility of living near a facility for unhoused people or transitional housing, they're not the same things, makes you uncomfortable, sit with your discomfort. Meditate upon it, trace it to its true roots. Consider what kind of person would choose not feeling a few unpleasant emotions over the physical needs of others. To slightly modify a phrase I found, let no classist sleep easy while anybody sleeps rough. If the term classist offends you, if you feel perhaps personally called out right now, also sit with that. Decide if that is something or someone that you want to be, and then act accordingly. Good night.
Good evening. I'm Donald McLaughlin Townsend, a resident of Lewiston and a resident of A Hand Up. Starting in 2022, I was homeless in my vehicle for 6 months, followed by another 6-month period of homelessness on foot because I felt too dirty and disgusting to go to work anymore, and therefore didn't have any money to fix my car that broke down, so I ended up doing a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs and stealing a lot of things. Flash forward 6.5 months, I finally made a plea deal with a very good lawyer that my mother found me, and got into actual sober housing. I had the choice, mind you, to go into either sober living or into like a boarding house where I didn't have any rules or any regulations or anything. And they were about the same price too, actually. But I've done boarding rooms before, and that leads to more drugs for me and more alcohol. And having the structure that a sober house provided, you know, friends, companions, rules, constant P tests, all kinds of meetings, and basically everything you could think of, people trying to help you and lead you to your goals, essentially. It's something that I needed, and I constantly see. As Joey said, he's the first oldest resident living there. I am the third oldest resident living there, and I have seen a lot of people come through, and I have seen way more successes than I have any failures in that house. And I believe that that goes for all of the houses in Lewiston and the state. And this moratorium would definitely put an absolute halt to all of those things, and we cannot have that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Deborah York. I'm the executive director and founder of An Angel's Wing, also Beth's Place, located in Lewiston, Maine. I sat down last night and I wrote a speech. It was probably at least a 3-minute long speech. I've thrown that out. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your hard work, all the hard work you have ahead of you that allows us to do our hard work. Have a good evening.
Good evening. I'm Dave Bilodeau. I was on the shelter committee. I live in Auburn, but I've worked here in Lewiston for 35 years. First, I want to thank Councilor Clement for the comments and the changes. I think it was well intended and much appreciated. I think a moratorium would cause more unintended consequences. I prefer taking the vote and doing what was asked to get more information and look at changing it afterwards. We don't want unintended consequences. And again, I just want to say I thank you for being open, and I thank you for your comments and willingness to make changes. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Good evening. My name is Joshua Petrowitz of 145 Summer Street, Apartment 1. I'm a resident of Lewiston, Ward 1, and I do believe that we all need to do a little better job loving our neighbor, and I think these recovery homes are doing an exceptional job of that. Loving our most vulnerable and weakest neighbors in Lewiston is essential, and we cannot forget about them. I firmly believe any moratorium would be detrimental to that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Further public comment? Public comment's now closed. Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So first off, I want to thank you all for being here, and especially for sharing your personal stories. It is extremely difficult to stand up and talk the way you did. So I want to tell you from my heart, I really appreciate that. That takes a lot of courage, and I think that's a great thing, so thank you. I would prefer that we move forward with maybe looking at the language, sending it to the planning board. I'm not in favor of a moratorium at this point. I'm fearful that that would stop things from happening that are already happening, so I wouldn't be able to support that. A question, so if we were to vote in favor of this tonight with the language change that has been put in place, removing the recovery houses, it goes to planning board next, and then before it comes back to us on that September 9th meeting, correct? Okay, September 5th, I mean,
Yes,
sorry.
September 5th.
Yeah, okay. And then at that point, we would be able to look at the language changes they made. They would be able to look at all of these things that we have and we've talked about tonight, and we can go forward with that.
And if we've determined that, you know, obviously we'll have the changes that they're recommending ahead of time, I can reach out to the council and share that with you, and we can decide if we want to do something similar to what we did with a field usage policy. Do we want to talk about it and workshop it, or do we want to go straight into a vote at that point once we see that? So I can leave space open on that workshop night as a placeholder just in case.
I would appreciate that, and I would also like to make sure that when the planning board looks at this as well, they get the recommendation from the housing committee, so that all of that can be incorporated with this part of this conversation. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank all of the feedback that we received ahead of the meeting. That was very helpful to us in understanding the impact of the changes we were going to make and how it would affect you. And it's very important. It's a learning experience for us. And you guys are the ones that are in the trenches doing the hard work. And it's very helpful for the feedback we received. I don't think there's anybody on this council that doesn't understand the extreme importance of the work that you do and that what recoveries do, houses do. The success rate is right up there, and we appreciate you for that. Going back to the moratorium, it's probably a moot point. I just wanted to let people know that my understanding of a moratorium was taking into account the language of leaving recovery houses out of it. I didn't want a moratorium on any recovery houses, it was just transitional housing. So I don't think that the moratorium's going to happen, but I just wanted to make it clear that I was, in no way did I want to interfere with any ongoing processes and any ongoing expansions or whatever. The more recovery houses we have, the more people you can help, and there's a lot of people out there that need that help. Last thing I wanted to talk to is Councilor Harriman's comment about he doesn't understand why we're against the what's happening at the Ramada Inn. He thought that the council supported it. I was clear when I voiced my support, is I'm all for transitional housing. I just questioned whether the Ramada Inn was the right place to have it. And the problem that I have is the size of the rooms at the Ramada Inn. The city ordinance says that they're supposed to be 300 square feet. The largest rooms are 288 square feet. The smaller rooms are 240 square feet. So I am concerned that I wouldn't even have a chance to voice my concern, because if we don't do something, and including the transitional housing with the shelters or something in an ordinance so that we can have a voice in that, then the council that is responsible for a lot of things that happen in the city will have no voice on that. So I'm just looking for a voice and an understanding that people will have to come to us and explain what they're doing, and so that my constituents can reach out to me, and then I can have an understanding of their support. Because the reality is regardless of what I feel, I represent the constituents in my ward, and so I have to respect their wishes. So that's my thought process when it comes to the transitional housing. So at this point, I echo Linda's support for passing this on first reading and dealing with it on the 5th.
Mayor.
One second. Councilor Clement, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to commend those people who had the courage to get up and speak tonight. I dealt with this. I dealt with employees with that problem for years. I understand what it takes to get up and reveal what has happened in your lives. You're to be commended. You've achieved two things that every person in recovery must do. They first recognize they have a problem, then they want to do something about it. And you've done something about it and continue to do something about it. God love you for it. Now, having said that, I obviously made a mistake earlier this evening. I meant to say, in my amendment, the term homeless shelter includes transitional housing but shall not include any certified recovery house or programs. We can all stand to be corrected from time to time, Mr. Mayor.
Is the council amenable to that second friendly amendment? It appears so, Madam Clerk, if you can make that note. Councilor LaChapelle, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I'm going to echo what every councilor said. Great job, people coming out and sharing your thoughts. I like what the Maine Association of Recovery Residents, John Branson wrote, that this ordinance, in his opinion, does not affect recovery at all. This does not have any effect on the recovery programs. A moratorium does not stop any existing facility that is running, does not stop it at all. I think my concern right now, I have no problem passing the reading tonight. I'm fine with it. My concern is this is a very large subject, and it encompasses a lot of different avenues. We can talk about recovery houses. We can talk about the houses that that I spoke to earlier that are popping up all around our residential homes, that all of a sudden we get a group home in the middle of a residential home. I would say that that is business, and we have no idea what's happening. So my concern was to start addressing these things, hence the reason for a moratorium, which, if we pass this tonight with the friendly amendment, I will vote in favor of it. But I would also like to have on our next agenda meeting a motion for a moratorium, because I do not believe that we are going to get this done in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. It's just not going to happen. This is a big subject, and I would love to have some of the people from the recovery houses on this, almost like the shelter committee that formed, to be looking at what of our zoning ordinances in regards to it. Speaking with Director Hediger, we do not have any rules in place right now for, I'm going to just cut the place on the corner of Webster and Pond Road, right on the side. That is a house that's in the middle of a residential area, and that is, it's not a recovery house. It's, they're taking care of residential people. There's another one, this group home. There's another one further down on Pond Road. There's one on Lassie Avenue. We can go through the list next to Mr. P's house. So I think this is something that we should look at, and if we come up with the decision that nothing should be done, then so be it. But I don't think we can bury our heads. I'm still concerned with the young lady that spoke earlier tonight, with what's going on there. And if we have some kind of ordinance, we can say how many people should reside in it for the square footage or whatever. There could be some kind of rules that we can have on it. So I am fine with moving forward on the vote. I can bet my bottom dollar we're not going to get this done in a couple meetings, folks. This is going to take some time, and I'd rather not rush through it. I'd rather put a moratorium on transitional housing for right now, and so we can come up with some kind of plan. This will not affect any existing facility in the city of Lewiston. It will have no effect on them at all. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilor Clement, did you have something to add?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I thought when we discussed the amendment originally, we were going to consider passing this first reading and directing staff to come back with any suggestions of things that they might want to see, which could give us an idea whether or not we need to move to a moratorium. I don't have a problem with including that on the docket or on the agenda for our next meeting. And if we don't need it, then we don't need it. But I think that staff can probably suggest things like, do we need to have something to deal with group homes? I think we can pass this first reading. We can separate a lot of these things from this particular topic. I've heard the comments about group homes from others. I was shocked to hear the young lady speak earlier tonight, to the degree it's going on. I mean, I found out about a couple of these places 2 years ago when I was in Councilor McCarthy's neighborhood, and knock on a door and, wow, what is going on here? And yeah, I think we need to look at that. But the exigent circumstance here would be to include this. We can always amend something in the future, but give us a toehold in dealing with this situation, get it past first reading, direct staff to come back with any recommendations for definitional things that we need to include in this subject area, and go ahead and prepare a moratorium. I don't have a problem with that. Doesn't mean we have to pass it. But if we see that it is such a large and cumbersome thing, then maybe that's the way to go. But better to have it and not need it. It's like golfing with an umbrella. You always carry an umbrella so it won't rain, you know.
We'll discuss golf at a later time,
Yep.
Councilor. Thank you.
Well, we probably need to carry a few more umbrellas around here, sir.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. So I guess I'm confused about what the moratorium would be on. Would it be on transitional housing? Would it be on group homes? Would it be on the LHA's Ramada proposal? And then what about all the recovery residences that are currently in development or may be developed in the future? Those would all be shut down. So I guess I'd like clarification on what a moratorium would cover, and I also just worry about the unintended consequences of such a decision.
Councilor McCarthy, did you have something else?
Yes. I have a question for the administrator. Dealing with group homes, can that be dealt with a separate ordinance from this one?
It's a separate ordinance in licensing. One thing that, you know, Kelly and I were talking about over here, some of the group homes that you're mentioning may not fall under our current group home definition. So even if you place a moratorium, what you're describing that you may want to put a halt to initially may not actually achieve that because they're not a group home under our current definition. So going back to, you know, Councilor McCarthy's comment is, you know, we certainly can put together what we can between now and then and make suggestions and at least tell you what we're finding initially, so you have, you know, kind of a pathway on which direction you want to head as we see it from a staffing level.
But back to my original question, can group homes be dealt in ordinance separate from shelters?
Dave?
Do we?
There's
Director-
licensing next to me and zoning on it.
Director Hediger, please join us.
So I think the complaints that maybe folks are receiving, excuse me, are from community living arrangements. Community living arrangements are, there may be other mechanisms, but it's driven by state law, it's driven by the Fair Housing Act. You have to allow a community living arrangement anywhere you allow a dwelling unit. That's where you hear the comment about no more than 8 residents. The whole idea is for them, the residents, to feel normal, right? To be in a normal residential setting, not to have this institutional feeling where they are. That's similar to the recovery language that's being referenced tonight. There's state law about recovery residences occurring in single-family dwellings and requirements that they have to meet. To Councilor McCarthy's question, from a zoning perspective, we don't touch those. We don't know about them. We find out about them when we get complaints. And then we'll call the operator and we'll say, I'm not sure what's going on. We'll call the police department because sometimes it's a behavior issue there. Sometimes it's a staffing issue because a lot of staff come over and they'll have meetings and whatnot. But other than that, it happens as a matter of right. Anything more than 8 is regulated through zoning. We have zoning districts where we regulate group care facilities. There are licensing requirements that the clerk's office has for group care facilities. I'm not even sure how many group care facilities we have in the community from a licensing perspective. The majority of them are single-family homes under that community living arrangement definition.
So the 8 individuals are the residents, not counting all of the individuals that come in and staff it.
That's right, that's right. And that's, so we'll talk to operators often and we'll say, have your staff meeting somewhere else. You know, maybe there's 6 people that work at this facility and work with all those residents, and they all show up on a certain day and the road is crowded with people and everything like that. It's kind of just being a good neighbor, right? Like, be respectful of what's going on. They don't want to attract attention either. I mean, the whole idea is for this to be, you know, unrecognizable, that it should function like a single-family home would.
Yeah, because my mother has 2 in her neighborhood, and the one across the street, there was 6 months that police and ambulance were there on a weekly basis, if not more frequent than that, to one of them. The other one, the individuals were just scary, and my daughter refused to allow her children to walk to the playground because they had to walk by that house, and they're just, you know, I understand people have issues, but to interfere with a child walking down the street
Excuse me,
in a
Councilor.
residential
If we
neighborhood.
can have it quiet in the council chambers, if you'd like to talk, please head outside. Thank you.
So that's the problem I have with all of this, is how it upsets everybody in the neighborhood because of the individuals that are being there, and is it a proper place for them to be? It sounds like we don't have any say in that.
I don't know that we can't, and it would probably be a question for the city attorney whether or not, like, we can require some type of registration or something like that, just so we know they're there, but I don't know that we can keep them from, I'm not sure that we can have any standards necessarily, or keep them from actually operating or being established in a certain area.
So the only standard is the 8 residents per household?
Right.
And there's no minimum size or bedroom requirements or bathroom requirements or anything like that?
Not for community living arrangements. For recovery residences there is. There's a different set of requirements there that's actually driven by statute that regulates fire protection. Talks about no more than 2 people to a bedroom. Talks about no more, you have to have one bathroom per 6 individuals, and that's in a single-family dwelling environment. And both of these are, there's obviously a need in the community. We get asked these questions a lot about both uses.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, it's listening to the discussion around the table. I think it's clear that we need to, my preference would be to table this for a workshop, but if we are going to pass it, then to build in a workshop for, you were saying the 5th, right, Administrator Hunter?
Yes.
Yeah, I just think we need to, hear more from staff, get up to speed, and rather than what's sounding like, it's hard to even, wrap our head around this and a slew of unintended consequences. Councilor Pease, did you have something else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a home right next door to mine. Properties are joined, there's nothing separating us. It's actually a 2-family home. There's 2 residents. There's 8 staff people there all the time, each with their own individual car. And then when they have meetings, there's 20 cars on my street. So, yeah, I know what you're saying. I live it. It's there. The residents, one I never see. The other ones, I can't get out of my truck and he's hollering to hi to me. And he's over to he's at my door in my truck before I'm out of my truck. Nice person. He's autistic, but he's good. So there are some areas where we have to be patient, understanding, and care a little bit. When they first came to my neighborhood, they asked if I wanted a fence put between my property and theirs. And I says, no, why do I need a fence there? And they says, well, it's so that you can have some privacy. I says, but aren't they supposed to be living in a home environment? And she says, yes. I said, well, if you're going to box them into a box, they're not going to be living in a residential. So I never got one. The other neighbor next door did. So I just have to say that we need to be understanding. And that's what we're all trying to do here. We're not trying to hamper anybody, stop anybody from getting treatment. We're not trying to alleviate anybody from having a place. So I appreciate your time, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Mr. Mayor, if I could be so brash as to suggest we ought to move along on this. I think if we pass it first reading, direction to staff, then we have time. We can do whatever we need to do. Next session, in between, I don't think moratorium is the answer. I really don't. But we may need to table it before we have a second reading or something. I think we need to find out where we are. The question came up, what would the moratorium look like? Hard to tell them, not knowing. We haven't seen any language for that. So let's move this along. First passage. That doesn't box us in any way. What it does is sets us up so we can move this along. There's going to be other things come up. It's almost the end of summer. Labor Day is just down around the corner, and we're gonna get back to business as usual, and things are going to be happening. And we just keep stalling on issues. So let's, without saying, let's move the question, can we move the question? Is there will of my colleagues to do that?
Yes, thank you, I appreciate that, Councilor Clement, and, yeah, Councilor Harriman, did you have something to add, quickly?
Yeah, it seems like, we've been all, as some people say, all around the mountain. It seems like there should have been a clear goal in mind at the beginning here. We started off with we want to regulate transitional housing, and there was no explanation as to why and what. Then it sounds like it was a direct response to the proposal for the Ramada, which I thought everyone was on board with. Now we're talking about recovery houses, and now we're talking about group homes, which aren't even part of this definition. So I mean, I think this whole amendment is unnecessary to begin with, but I don't know exactly where we're going with it, where we've talked about so many different kinds of housing. And I just don't, I think we needed to have a goal from the beginning, work towards that goal instead of just hitting all these different sorts of things that have come up tonight. So, I mean, I think it's unnecessary to begin with. I'm not supporting it, but I would just encourage people to put some more thought into something before bringing it forward, so that we have a clear sense of where we're going.
Councilor Jelinek, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your perspective, Councilor Harriman, and I too feel like more discussion has to happen. Initially, I was just going to vote flat no on this because I feel like I said earlier, transitional housing and homeless shelters are two very different things. And that's particularly important because as we talk about this and we talk about the difference even on a project that we've spoken about at the Ramada, which we're not voting on tonight. I mean, that's the thing to keep in mind here. There's not been a proposal put forth. We workshopped that, period. And I think there's been a lot of confusion about that. But, I live in Ward 7, and I know that my constituents, deserve some truth about, what's going down there. And I'm concerned that clumping homeless shelters and transitional housing together when it's not a homeless shelter, I think it's really important to keep those things separate. That being said, I also appreciate the compromise that we reached, I think we reached, regarding the, extrapolating recovery residences from this agenda item. I'm going to go ahead and vote for this only because I really want more discussion. I'm hopeful that the city's going to come back. I know that the city will come back. And, at that point, more discussion can incur. But I do appreciate your perspective.
Administrator, I have a quick question. So this is going to go before the planning board here on the 28th. And then we're going to workshop it on the 19th. On the 5th.
So what my plan is in my head right now, because we don't know what the outcome of the planning board meeting is, and we have some of those legal notices, is to set aside workshop time for that, but also include the second reading on the agenda. And if it's deemed that based upon the workshop and it's too much to digest, you can continue that public hearing and the second reading to the meeting of the 19th? Yes. 19th. That way we've kind of got all bases covered from a legal posting standpoint.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No.
Well,
No,
it's the planning board.
The planning board.
The planning board, yes. Just keep all your evenings free right now,
Okay, hang on.
Uh-oh. Yes.
See, if you pass this out in the first place.
Councilors, if we can just wait a moment as the Director of Planning and Code confer with our administrator.
So, yeah, that plan will work. We'd need to place the legal ad for planning board by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
With the information that we are using tonight. The planning board obviously can amend that based upon that.
Right, okay. I think we're ready to vote, councilors. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3.
No.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5. Yes. Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6 to 1.
I love you all, thanks for being here. Item number 10.
Item 10, acceptance of a utility access easement from MRE LLC through their property at 855 Lisbon Street. Requested action to approve the acceptance of a utility access easement from MRE LLC through their property at 855 Lisbon Street.
May I have a motion, Councilor P, second by Councilor LaChapelle. Director Brencheck, is this you? Oh, okay, do you want to just kick us off here?
Sure. This is very simple easements on having access to get the water readings from the new property development at 855 Lisbon, which is across from East, and they're just putting in a private street, so we wouldn't have access to those meters if we didn't put easements in place. That's all what this is.
Thank you, Director. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5. Yes. Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Agenda item number 11.
Number 11, order authorizing application and acceptance of funds from the U.S. Government of Justice Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the application and acceptance of funds from the U.S. Department of Justice Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor McCarthy, second by Councilor LaChapelle. Chief St. Pierre, are you saying anything? Are you kicking us off?
I'm good. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
Okay. I guess, is there anything you'd like to say?
This is a grant that we get, and we use for, certain programs such as crime prevention things. I mean, we often buy like the cop cards, badges and stickers to give to the Cub Scouts that come, to our station to visit. There's a whole host of things we use. We use it for sometimes technology or increasing our technology. So, we can buy like new tasers under this as well. We might buy, I think, what's called a Webster key or something that we can use to get into a building if it's an active shooter event at a school or something. It's basically, there's a myriad of uses, but this grant allows us, it's broken down from $63,706, 44,000 plus is for us, and Auburn also gets 19,142. But Lewiston Police Department has agreed to be the fiscal agent for the participants for both Lewiston and Auburn.
Thank you, Chief. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Chief. Item number 12.
Item number 12, order authorizing the transfer of funds from various public works projects to fund the updated cost for the Pickleball Courts project. Requested action to approve the order authorizing the transfer of funds from various public works projects to fund the updated cost for the Pickleball Courts project.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councilor Trelawney is seconded by, I think, Councilor Scott.
No.
Oh, Councilor McCarthy, my apologies. Discussion, Director Brencheck, please kick us off.
I think the news that everybody wants to know is when will we build it if it is approved. So it'll start in the fall for clearing the land over at North Temple Road, and it would be built in the spring. The longest delay on this is really the contractor that does the specialty work at the end, painting it, and the markings has a wait list of 9 months to a year. So hopefully we award this, we get it started, and we get on their list.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I just had a question about the status of the other three projects. if we take this money from them, are those projects basically on hold right now anyway?
Right, the restrooms was not something that we decided to do. It was $250,000, and we've been using that on other projects. So that would be a project that we're no longer doing. The other two rec conversions are still looking at the conversion within the conversion, which is an application we're doing for Island Point. So that's a couple of years out.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the process when you pick select a location for something like this?
So this location was picked back in 2020, not 19 anything, 2020, I'm tired. And so the selection was made to be next to the new fire station in a lot that the city owned. Because the cost we knew was going to be so much considerably more, we looked at other locations that already had a parking lot and a road so that we wouldn't have to be paying those costs. We looked at areas behind the school, right by Public Works, that used to be a school. We looked at some of the other school locations, but they restricted use during the day because school was going on. So we looked at, the land, but also less impact to neighbors being close. And there is an apartment building across the street, so we're cognizant of that, and it would be, times that we allow that court to be open, as well as doing a noise border of the two rows of trees out front. It's an additional cost, but it's to help keep noise down. We don't care if we bother the fire department, but the neighbors across the street we do have concern for, but it isn't in a neighborhood where pickleball can be noisy.
So the area at the high school where the tennis courts are now and where they play in pickleball now, that land that's to the right of it is not feasible or was never feasible?
The parking lot area to be made into pickleball courts?
No, I'm talking about the wooded area between East Avenue and the tennis courts.
I don't really know if that was undesirable. We looked at other areas around other schools, but.
Okay, how about the parking area that the tennis courts use now? Now that we put new parking along the entrance of the high school, and there's plenty of parking at the high school, why wasn't that land?
The additional parking was built because the high school needed it, and if you're at the tennis court at any time during the day, it is needed, and overflow parking was needed. So within that project, I was happy to see the school department built that additional parking across from the tennis courts, but all of that is very much needed. I believe it's a drop-off after that parking lot area, so that was undesirable land. Originally, it was designed to be right near McGraw Park. That was an original design before I got here for a location. So I think it's moved around a bit.
It has.
I think we have a good location. I think we have a location where they could be expanded later on. It's been, again, a lot of vocal voices around wanting this, and we think we picked a good location, a little bit out of town, but not too far out of town, with room for expansion if we wanted to build more. And, it's been a long time coming. It's a very popular sport right now.
Yeah, so long now that the prices almost tripled.
Doubled at least. Yeah.
Doubled anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Jelinas.
I just want to say thank you. As you know, I've been trying to push this forward since 2020. This has been a thing and pickleball's a thing. I mean, it's a thing. And it's a cool thing, really. I actually, when I had some constituents approach me with this back when my first term, it was early in 2020, actually, I literally had to watch videos of what pickleball was. And now it's a thing. It's awesome. So I think this is an exciting project. It is unfortunate that, it's been sort of postponed as long as it has. When this started, we were talking about that space right next to McGraw Field. But we did a TV thing, a little news interview out on the spot there by the fire station. It's a great location, I think. I just think this is a really exciting, positive thing for our community.
Councilor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, all in favor. Thank you for taking the time to spread this out and put recreation in different wards in our city. And it's not all downtown. We have nothing in Ward 4, and this finally gets something in Ward 4. I appreciate the thought of just diversity is a wonderful thing, having it spread out throughout the city. So I know for the residents of Ward 4, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I just wanted to answer some of Councilor Pease's questions about the high school area. So the expansion of the high school with that parking and the paving that just recently happened, that was because that was much needed, not only for parking, and folks were parking on the grass, which had developed a gully in that area, which was a rain-off that was not working well, but also to help alleviate that turn that goes into the high school when you first make that entrance, which was extremely tight with 2 vehicles and all of that happening. I've been on the building committee for many of the projects that have happened in that area, and I'm on the facilities committee for the school department. The piece of land that you were speaking about to the right, that is where the hill is by East Avenue, is not a viable piece for building, according to the school committee surveys that were done there to look at that as possible parking back before they did the expansion for the new expansion that's at the high school. And then where the parking is now, directly after that, is a massive gully, because we had looked at that as being part of the expansion to go forward when we were looking at where the new wing was. So it is actually, it goes like pretty deep right there, pretty quick. So that's why that work was done, and it would be, I think, difficult to put some of that there and change that.
Councilor McCarthy, did you have some? Okay, I guess we're now back to you, Mr. Pease. Councilor Pease, my apologies.
Thank you. Well, the idea that there's a massive gully there that you'd have to take care of, I think there was a massive gully when we did the fields, and a massive gully when we did the track, and a massive gully when we did the school. So massive gullies don't bother anybody here. There's plenty of land there, plenty of land unused that we could have developed and could develop. And I think it would be a lot less costly than where we're doing it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Scott, please.
Thank you. Councilor, please, if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you a map that we looked at and looked really close at that, because actually when you look at the land ownership between the school department and some of the residents there, it's actually kind of wonky a little bit, and the school department actually owns a piece of land that is up on Webster Street that's like this plot, that's an empty plot, but we don't own the piece behind it. It's sort of mixed up. So I think I would be happy to bring that to you so that we could talk about that a little more and you could see what that looked like, because we did have some detailed surveying done of that. Okay?
Yep,
Thank you.
We are now having public comment for this.
Just one quick thing. I think pickleball's really cool too. I think it's needed. You guys are doing some really great plans and murals and all the extra things that you're doing to benefit everyone here. I do want you to be prepared for some backlash from some of the community that we're directly tied to that are going to say, wait, why are they spending money on a pickleball court? I'm sad to hear the bathrooms are no longer on the docket. I'm hoping we can revisit that at some point and put that in the agenda at another time to funds in the future, because it is needed. I won't take up much more of your time, but I do think it's a great thing, so thank you.
Further public comment? Back to the council. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to your point on the downtown restrooms, part of the contract we had selling land to Trinity Jubilee was that they were going to maintain public bathrooms. So when we looked at it for one stall, it was going to be $500,000 and like $75,000 a year to maintain it, and it just didn't make sense. So we have done our due diligence, and we know the need is there. We've just come up with a different way to handle it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5. Yes. Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes?
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now up to item number 13.
Item 13, appointment to the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee. We have 3 requested actions. The first one is to appoint Deputy City Administrator Brian O'Malley to serve as member of the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee for a 3-year term, said term to expire June 30, 2026, and said appointment to be retroactive to July 1, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
No.
Who made the motion?
Well, are we voting on these individually? or-
Individually.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Public comment?
Mr. Mayor, can we catch who made the motion and seconded it?
By a show of hands, could we find out who motion? It was Counselor Jelinas and then seconded by Counselor Pease,
Okay, thank you.
according to my best recollection. Public comment is now closed. Back to the council. And are you willing to accept this appointment should you be voted in, Deputy Administrator?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0. The second requested action, to review the application submitted for appointment to the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee and to nominate and appoint if an applicant if interested.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, do we have a nomination?
I'd like to make a
Counselor
motion.
Jelinas.
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Monique Roy as a member of the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee for a 3-year term, said term to expire July 30, 2026.
Second.
And well, it's my understanding that we do not need a second on these.
Oh, we don't need to vote? Oh, sorry.
Or, we're taking other nominations, I think, then we'll vote one by one.
Okay.
Mayor,
Counselor Clement.
I would nominate Bridget Sikowski for a term on the committee.
Okay. Do we have another nomination, or were there only two? Discussion on these nominations. Counselor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both of these are from my ward, so I can't use that as a reasoning. But looking at the two applications, they both seem to be well-qualified individuals in the community, so the only differential I'm using between them is Monique Roy's been a resident for 17 years, where Bridget's only been a resident for 3 years. So that's why I'm supporting Monique Roy for this appointment. Thank you.
Public comment for this item? Back to the council. Counselor Jelinas.
I was going to sort of explain my rationale for nominating Monique Roy. Monique Roy has been involved with this community for years and years, not just residing here for 17 years, but actively involved in leadership, serving on different committees, and intimately familiar with City of Lewiston in different capacities. I've had the opportunity to work alongside her for many of those years, and I think she'd be a strong candidate for this position.
I would agree. I'd support the council voting for Monique Roy. Counselor Clement?
The only reason I nominate the other party, Mr. Mayor, is I recall about 4 years ago, the first nominee was chair of our school committee and resigned quite suddenly on a Sunday evening without explanation. She's already a member of the Lewiston Auburn Railroad Company, and I just think we need to spread it around. I don't think anybody should have several committee appointments, and that's the reason that I put forth Ms. Sikowski. I think we should be owed an explanation as to why the sudden resignation. I mean, that's an important position in the community, chair of the school committee. This happened on a Sunday evening about 7 o'clock, as I recall. So that's my only reason right there.
Further discussion from the council? Counselor Scott.
I would like to just point out that I too have worked with the first nominee, Monique Roy, and I know her to be someone that works extremely hard, has dedication to our community, and I am fully in support of nominating her and having her fill this position.
Further discussion before we call the vote? Madam Clerk, if you can call the vote, and I believe if we can, get each person to choose their vote.
So,
Name, yes.
Counselor from Ward
Thank you.
3, you need to tell me which one you're supporting.
Monique Roy.
Ward 4?
Monique Roy.
Ward 5?
Bridget Sikowski.
Ward 6?
Sikowski.
Ward 7?
Monique Roy.
Ward 1?
Monique Roy.
Ward 2?
Monique Roy.
5-2 for Monique Roy.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are now up to reports and updates from the...
We still have to vote.
We still have to vote
Officially
her
have to
in.
vote on it, right?
Officially appoint. That was just to
That was
determine
just to
who
make
was
her
going
the
to win the
single
appointment.
nominee. And
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's please make it official.
So the action is to appoint Monique Roy as a member of the Lewiston Auburn Transit Committee for a 3-year term, said term to expire June 30, 2026.
May I have a motion, please? Councilor Pease.
Second.
Second by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5? Yes. Ward 6?
Abstain.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6.
Thank you for catching that, Madam Clerk. I appreciate you being here. We are now up to reports and updates from the council. Councilor Scott, and then Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this short, and I hope I'm given a little leeway tonight. I'll fill you in with the full report at our next meeting, but I'm looking at the time, and I kind of have to go, and I think most people understand why. So I do want to point out one specific thing that happened last evening, and I want to recognize our nutrition director, Alyssa Roman. She was nominated and she was given the award. She was nominated by an employee of the school department that works directly with her, and she was just named the State of Maine Nutrition Director of the Year. Her work that she does in the city of Lewiston has been recognized not only in the state, it has been recognized regionally and is recognized nationally. She's been down to Washington and worked with other nutrition directors in other states for her phenomenal work. So I think it's a great thing that she's doing for our community, and I think we should be very proud that we have such a phenomenal nutrition director working for our school department. So thank you, Elisa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update on the airport. Even though we haven't had a meeting in 2 months, we had the auction of the surplus equipment and all the equipment from the Elite Hangar. We had budgeted to raise $75,000 from the sale. Our net, after the 5% surcharge and all marketing and handling fees, we netted $140,000. So we almost doubled the money that we were expecting out of it. So it was a very successful auction, and we're still trying to move forward with, there's 3 planes and some parts out there that we're trying to move off site so that we can re-rent the hangar number 5, but we are moving forward on that, and hopefully the next meeting I'll have an update from our meeting tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Harriman.
Just on public art, quickly, you may have noticed several new murals going up around town. There's a ribbon cutting for the one at the corner of Bartlett and Walnut Street a week from today at noontime.
Further reports and updates? We are now on to new business. Is there any?
Mr. Mayor,
We
if
are
I
now-
could
oh,
just,
sorry,
I'm sorry.
Administrator Hunter, please
Just
continue.
for clarification, to borrow Councilor Harriman's description, we've kind of gone all around Robin Hood's barn on the ordinance. Is it the desire we are satisfied not to put the moratorium on the next agenda because there are legal components I need to prepare? If we're okay in where we're at with that now, based upon that decision, but I just want clarification for that because we did go back and forth.
I mean, I think we
Personally,
were-
I would prefer it not be on the agenda. That's me, and if we want, we can go around the table, but I would prefer not.
I think consensus is at this point is that it's,
Don't say consensus yet.
well, sorry, Councilor LaChapelle, would you like to say
Yes, I
something?
think we should put the moratorium on there, and we can just table it or just bypass it, but at least it's there. We don't have to act on it, at least it's the notification's there. That's my feeling on it. If the rest of the council doesn't agree with it, that's fine. But I think we should have it there. Just like if we find we have too much work going on and we're gonna table the other part, then we would, make a decision on it. But I think it should be on there, just to give us some room. That's my feelings.
Thank you, Councilor LaChapelle. Councilor Herman?
Thank you. I don't think we need it, and I don't think we should have staff spend the time on developing that. And I don't think we need that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as a safety valve that we have it on there. I don't anticipate having to use it, but, and I would like to clarify that the moratorium does not include recovery houses. I think that was the consensus of the board, that it would be just towards the transitional housing. I think it's important that we do our next step correctly, and if we have to delay that a meeting or two to get more input, to get it done, I think that it gives us options at this point to deal with what all our concerns are as far as the transitional housing. So I'm for having it on the agenda. Thank you.
I realize that the members of the council think it should be on there just in case, like a fire extinguisher on the wall or something else like that. But I think I'm concerned about the message that a moratorium sends, and I don't think it's a light thing to put on the agenda. And yes, I would advocate that we keep it off the agenda. Would other councilors like to chime in at this point?
I feel the exact same way. I'm a no, I don't think it's necessary. I wouldn't consider it, even if it was on, and I think it sends a very specific message. So I'm not interested in having it on the agenda.
Councilor Clement?
Well, I agree, it sends a very specific message, and maybe it's one we need to send. I'm ambivalent about it, but I think it's a good idea to have it there as a safety valve. Like you say, a fire extinguisher on the wall, or an umbrella in the golf cart, whatever you want to call it. But if we don't need it, we don't need it. If we suddenly need it, then we're 30 days or so behind the 8 ball. So, yeah, put it on there. What harm is there? If we don't need it, we don't use it.
Councilor Pease?
I agree. If we don't need it, we don't use it. But if it's there, we have it. We need it. Why are we worried about having it on the agenda? We're doing this to protect ourselves. We're doing it so that we can have legal notice done and move this thing along. We're not trying to delay anything. We're trying to do it right. Thank you.
At this point, Administrator Hunter, it appears that there's a majority that would.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Is there, what's that? Councilor Herman, is there something you'd like to add?
Just curious how much staff time and legal time and advertisements that would entail. I don't know if everyone is aware of that.
There would be some replication of the previous moratorium, but there is the cost of the legal ad, and they're running anywhere between $400 and $800 for those legal ads.
And I assume legal review is needed as well?
It would behoove us to have that, yes.
Thank you.
Further new business. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilor Clement, second by Councilor Pease. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Motion passed by 7-0.
You guys have a great night.
Well, I'll hear.